There's a bridge down the city. Bridges.
Oh, nice.
Kept bugging me. Do something different. Do something different. I said, okay, guys. It's a apartment building I'm doing right next to the University Art Museum.
Oh, yeah. Oh, on Oxford.
On Durant.
On Durant there. Cool.
Finally, that's what planning decided to support. But yeah.
Parking do you have to provide?
0. It's
Yeah.
it's a special zone that does not require parking.
Yeah, right. Sure, where that, sure. Boundaries of that.
It's going to be interesting.
I did a project on Dane,
The resolution.
50 feet away
Oh.
from they had to okay. By the park.
You were
Oh,
the, I left it for your signature.
Oh, okay, very good. All right.
Great.
Yeah, it's
Signing.
Yeah, I just
strange, but I'm not even sure it's legal. Because I'm not even sure it's legal at this point, because no parking.
Great, thank you.
Because that-
findings to support it and run, you know, the whole thing with the university. You know, people.
yeah, but you got to have ADA. So they may, if you have units, you may have to provide parking.
If I ever encountered that. Something there, yeah. At least one.
Thought so, I didn't.
All right. Oh, I see it's 7 o'clock. So I will call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Albany to order. Today is June 25th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ann, may we have the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Arkin,
Here.
Commissioner Moss,
Here.
Commissioner Pilch,
Here.
Chair Donaldson.
Here. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. Tonight we have one item on the consent calendar, and it is a planning application for an antenna replacement for the AT&T wireless facility at 1035 San Pablo.
Mr. Chair, this project is within 500 feet of my home, so I have to step out.
Okay, we'll call you back. All right, so as a consent calendar item, anyone in the audience can pull this item from the agenda and we'll discuss it separately, or any commissioner can pull it from the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to pull this item from the agenda? Don't see anyone. Any commissioners? All right, then I will accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Surprise, I'll second.
You'll second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and no opposed? All right, so the consent calendar has been approved, so if you're here for the AT&T wireless project at 1035 San Pablo, your project has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, which ends on July 9th, and if no appeal, well, in any event, you can proceed to work with staff toward implementation of your project. Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the time when we allow anyone who would like to address the commission on any issue that's not on the agenda to come forward and speak to the commission. Is there anyone who would like to speak on public comment tonight? See no one, so I will move on then. Next item on the agenda is a planning application 14036, which is design review and a parking exception for a second-story addition at 941 Jackson Street. Is staff report?
Yes, good evening. Before you this evening is a request for design review and a parking exception for a second-story addition at 941 Jackson. The subject lot is 3,700 square feet with an 855 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home that was built in 1943. There's also an existing 272 square foot accessory structure located at the northeast corner of the property. Our records indicate that the owner legalized that in 2007 and installed a half bath and some additional storage space. As part of this scope, the applicant is proposing to expand the first floor to accommodate a new family room and master bedroom. The second story will include 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The overall living area will increase by 820 square feet, resulting in a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom home, 1,675 square feet in area. The maximum building height is proposed to be 24 feet 7 inches. The home is minimal traditional in appearance and is proposed to remain. The second-story addition, will be located 23 feet 9 inches back from the building face. The applicant is proposing to replicate the gable details on the second-story elevation as well as existing vent details and fascia trim. And here we have a rendering of the existing front facade, and below is the proposed second-story addition. It should be noted this project results in a 0.51 FAR. Design review applications above 0.45 require exceptional design that the commission looks for. We indicated in the staff report that additional articulation and visual relief could be provided, and you can see this note here on this portion of the addition. We've included a condition requiring that the additional detail be provided and submitted as part of the building permit application. Parking exception is required for 2 reasons, the first of which is that the driveway width at its greatest is 7 feet 8 inches, so it's not the typical 8.5 feet that we require for compliant parking. So the commission, in order to approve this, would have to make a finding reducing the driveway width. Additionally, the way the house is designed, the second off-street parking space is proposed to go into the front yard setback. This is the result of the project design extending the north wall into the driveway. In some senses, it creates the need for a parking exception, and I can show you the site plan here. So this is the front yard parking exception, and this is the parking space out of the setback. Here is the new building wall. So that's something for you to consider as part of your review. If you feel you can come to a decision on this evening, we've included conditions of approval as well as findings with that special condition. The applicant is here this evening, and I'm available to answer questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Questions of staff?
So the existing, the driveway width that you cited is existing? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
That's it.
Any other questions of Van? Seeing none. Is the applicant here tonight, or the applicant's representative? Would you like to address the commission? Please come forward to the microscope. If you have any, maybe present your project a little bit, tell us what your objectives are here, or introduce yourselves so we can ask questions if we have some. Mm-hmm. Sure, that'd be great. And state your name for the record. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my name is Juan Jose Arteaga. I am the designer for the project.
Okay.
We try to do the project to address for this family because they have 2 kids, just have 2 bedrooms. I need another bedroom. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason they try to get the bigger house. They already have a not too big backyard, and they like to maximize the backyard for the kids, the small kids. That's the reason we didn't expand too much in the rear area, just to maximize this space. In any case, it's not used because it's 7'8", and when you have the kids' seats in the car, you cannot access to the seats, or we have to go to the driveway to open the doors to access the kids. In any way, it's not going to use. They're not using this space. That's the reason we encroach a little bit in this space, but we keep the 4-foot setback for requirements. And also, it's a really small house, not a big house with 1,600 square foot house. I think it's enough for 4 people.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? And your architect is not here tonight?
I'm a designer.
You are
I'm a general contractor, but I know a license.
Okay.
I also am working with
You're doing the
license.
design
Yes.
on that? Okay,
Yes.
I understand. That's great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. We may call you back if we have
By the
questions.
way, we are agreed to change the window, additional windows.
Uh-huh.
in the car.
Okay, okay, that's good, yeah. That's suggested in the staff report, I think, yeah. All right. All right, this is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing then on 941 Jackson. Is there anyone who'd like to address the commission on this item? And do we have any speaker cards?
I don't have any cards.
No, okay. For the benefit of everyone in the audience, we do have speaker cards in the back, and if you do plan to speak on one of the items here, it'd be great if you filled them out in advance and then brought them to Ann, and when we get to that agenda, we'll have your cards ready. Thank you. All right, so no one who would like to speak on 941 Jackson? I would like to. You would like to, all right. Coming in. Welcome.
Well, I'm lucky I didn't have to wait.
That's right. You did not.
Thank you.
State your name for the record if you could.
I'm Don Driscoll. I live at 934 Madison Street, due east of the property in question. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, who could not be here. First, I want to second the parking concerns of Jackson Street neighbors of 941. It's very close to Ocean View, a highly impacted area. If parking requirements have meaning, they should be enforced on the south half of the 900 block of Jackson. My second concern is more personal, living on Madison behind the proposed construction. The submissions to the city are inaccurate and understate the negative impact 941 Jackson is having and will have on our property. First, the description in the building code of current lot coverage is inaccurate. I've measured dimensions from the street and from Google Maps, and it is clear that the percent of currently covered, that is currently covered and that will be covered is somewhat understated. Second, the plans mislocate the so-called shop, which is shown at 6 feet 7 inches from our property. In fact, it is 4 inches. Part of the problem seems to be exaggeration. The original part of the shop as shown on Google is 6 feet from our property line, not 6 feet 7 inches. Part of the problem is misrepresentation. Since the Google Earth photos were taken, I estimate 2 years ago, the garage has been extended to within 4 inches of our property line without benefit of permits. It is now proposed that 937 be built out to within slightly more than 14 feet from our property, not the required 15-foot setback. The proposed construction will loom and block our light. Before these plans that will adversely affect us are even considered by the Zoning and Planning Commission, they ought to be honestly submitted. We ask that zoning and planning require plans that show the property as it is, that has accurate measurement, and that says what will be done with construction that exists now that's unlawful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on 941 Jackson? Okay, seeing no one, then I will close the public hearing and bring this item back to the commissioners.
Would you like to give the applicant an opportunity to rebut or answer the questions?
Is there anything you'd like to say about that? About the comments that you've heard?
Referring in the back of the.
Correct. I think that's what he's referring to.
They have a bike shed. It's not it's just a removable stuff.
Okay.
It's not really a building. It's just something they have a bike shed.
It's a bike shed.
Yeah, we don't show in the
Okay.
drawings because it's not
Okay.
a fixed building.
Have you had a survey done of the property?
Yes, we take the dimension for this property.
You did have a survey
Yes, we
done?
did. It's not a survey, the surveyor, but we have the dimensions for the We take the dimensions,
You-
we took
you-
the dimensions.
oh,
into
you
the-
measured
yes,
it,
we
you
measured.
measured things
Yes,
yourself?
Yes.
And you think that the plans are
They're
accurate
accurate.
based
Yes,
on
yes.
current
The
conditions?
only we don't show really is the back shed they have in the area because it's removable stuff. It's not-
All right.
It's for the bikes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions for the? Oh, okay. We have another one person who'd like to speak. That's all right. I will reopen the public hearing then. Please come forward. State your name for the record.
I'm Barbara Chambers. I live at 937 Jackson Street. We're direct neighbors to the main.
Okay.
The person that was just speaking prior to me, that is a shed. It's not attached to that building.
Okay.
In their backyard. It's a shed. It was built when their last baby was about to be.
All right. Okay.
We looked over the plans that we got from the city, and we are the ones that submitted this last page to you, so those were our questions. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay.
You're
Thank
the
you.
neighbor that shares the driveway then? You share the driveway?
Yes, we share
Oh,
the driveway.
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Right. So then I guess I'll close the public hearing again. After opening it. Okay, commissioners, who would like to start the discussion on this item? Questions? Mr. Moss? Yeah.
Last attachment.
It's attached, yeah.
I think I do have one concern, and that is and again, this is always something that bothers me all these years, that you're creating your own requirement for an exception by building the stairway out into where the parking would normally be. The design of the stairway as you have it can be changed so it doesn't have to project out that wall, and would then be able to park 2 tandem cars outside of the front setback. So then we'd only have to grant 1 exception instead of 2. The issue has always been, 1, creating your own exception, and 2, the front setback, 2 exceptions. So you're creating one exception. We usually don't have a problem with that, but creating your own exception, requiring a second exception. If you look at the site plan or the floor plan, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a kind of a funny way you have that stair with a number of risers on one side, and then you turn and you got a very small number of risers on the other side. And then there's a long distance of a hallway to the bedroom. So. Okay, that's slightly different than what I'm looking at. Oh, second story, sorry. So there you go. You see that long on the south side, the risers, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the floor to floor on this? Do you know what the floor to floor is? I understand. You got to come up here and talk.
Bill, it's a 9-foot floor to
Yeah,
floor.
9-foot floor to floor. So
Can
7,
you move for the first floor, because the second floor is a consequence for the first floor.
I understand. And the consequence of which design causes 2 parking exceptions. So that's one of my concerns.
Can you move to the first floor for explaining what is the...
Sorry. So you need 15 risers to get up there.
Part of the house, with the rear back. If we move the
15
stairs
risers.
here, you have a very narrow here.
Yeah, and if you put 7 there and 7 on the top,
We're going to move just a 24
okay. Well, I still stand by, I think you could work those stairs so that you wouldn't have to have that stick out, so it affects the parking. Sure.
So thank you, first of all, for considering our design. And it's, as you probably know, hard to be a young family in Albany because the homes are all two-bedroom, and then you come for the schools, which we love. But we ran out of room. We didn't actually ask for the parking exception. We had shared the plans with the city. We can still fit both of our cars there, and we were able to even with our story poles. But the city told us that we should ask for an exception, so we did. The truth of the matter is the shared driveway just makes it incredibly difficult to get in and out. So that space where we're putting the stairs, I can't use that anyway. There's nothing that we can do there. I can't get the kids out of the car. I can't open those doors at all. The cars butt up against the wall. So we can't really park there anyway. So we have been parking one car on the streets simply because we can't get the children in and out of the cars. So I don't think it will actually impact anything about the street in general, because it's going to be exactly how it is right now. We've never had a problem really parking, and I know our neighbors park on the street all the time. Many people park one car in their driveway and one on the street.
Yeah.
In addition, we wanted to be very careful with the stairs. I have elderly parents that come to visit for extended periods of time, and I couldn't have a stair. I need to be able to have one that's safe for them.
Yeah, the stair I'm proposing is the same stair. Same width, same risers. It just goes up, comes over, and comes out.
We also wanted to have storage underneath the stairs
This would
because,
increase your storage under the stairs. So,
again, this is
I
like,
think it's important for you to understand that, Albany, by vote of the people, actually, requires two off-site parking spaces for every dwelling unit. And that's why, and so you may not have tried to seek a parking exception, but you will need one if you don't provide, if your plans don't show two off-street parking spaces that meet our dimensions. So, and that just applies to everybody in town. And we're looking not only at you, but someone who might live in that house in the future. So we have to have a different perspective. I recognize that it is a narrow driveway, and you probably do have concerns about opening the doors and getting the children out and all of that. But what we really need to look for are two legal off-street parking spaces.
Are there
It
ever
happens to us all the time, and it's the toughest issue we have to deal with as planning commissioners, with many, many second-story additions. So.
are there other people, though, that have exceptions? And I mean, I
Oh, yes.
imagine
No, we
since
do grant
you are
exceptions.
recommending to
We
ask
do,
for
no,
it. Yeah.
exceptions are commonly
Right,
granted by the
okay.
commission.
Okay, so there's precedent for
But that's
asking.
why Mr. Moss is looking closely at your design, because he feels that, I put words in his mouth anyway,
I'll put 'em in.
that if your design creates the short parking space, you need to look at your design again to find a way to change it to allow that parking space, legal parking spaces to be there.
Right. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, but I guess I'm saying it's not in reality going to change the situation that I can't use that space to park, because I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. They're both in car seats. I can't open the door.
Yeah.
So there's no way for me to get the kids into the car safely or get them out. So I understand that that's my reply.
Yeah.
yeah, I understand the situation, and it's sometimes we have to look at the law, and you said it 3 or 4 times. We're granting you special privilege. Yes, we've done it to other people, And in most cases, it was for a specific reason, narrow lot. They couldn't get their parking width. Yours would be, yes, your driveway width is only 7'8", it's not our 8'6". And that's just because the house was built when it was built and it's an existing condition. And so I'm struggling with granting you this because by granting it to you, everybody else is going to come in and ask for the same thing.
Everybody else doesn't have shared driveways, though, do they? I don't think anyone else on my street.
That actually
maybe.
works in your benefit.
It really doesn't, though. It's incredibly hard. I'm sure, as my neighbor can attest to, it's
I'm
difficult
sure
to
your neighbor
do
is a very lovely person.
anything.
Can I ask
sure
you
that
what you're
makes
getting at, just to clarify?
Well,
I
to
think what you're
clarify,
getting at is that the stairway could be built to not encroach upon the driveway.
And then you move
in
the
which
cars
case, the two parking spaces would be moved back, and you wouldn't need that front yard setback exception.
Correct, the front yard.
And
So,
So if only the stairs were changed in this plan, then you wouldn't need to grant you one of the exceptions. I think that's what we're trying to say.
It's not going to affect anything about this. I understand how close it is there. I understand you're going to be parking one car in the front yard and probably one car in the street. But then we don't have to grant the exceptions and make a precedent out of this.
But I just wanted to make sure that you understood the details of what we were getting at here. Did that make sense? One of the exceptions is because the car sticks out into the front yard too much. The other exception is about your driveway width, which you can't do anything about. It was built like that. But if to allow a space that encroaches into the front yard requires an exception, whereas even if you don't park that way, whereas if we put two spots such that the frontmost car does not encroach upon the front yard setback, those are two legal spots except for the width exception. Correct. Yes. Understood. Understood. I'm just
No, I
trying
get
to-
what you're saying. You don't want to make precedent and everything, but this is just practical.
It is
I understand it
practical.
won't materially change how you park,
Yeah.
but we're
Right.
just trying to explain the details.
Okay, I appreciate that, actually, because I didn't understand
You can still
that.
park in the front yard. We can't take that away from you.
Right.
So the way you actually use the space is not going to change. Unfortunately, we can't make it any wider, but you can park in the front, in your driveway, and be able to open the doors on both sides. We're not telling you you have to park in these spaces, but we're just saying you have to provide them. Because
Yeah.
by code.
Yeah,
And
I
if
guess
you
I'm
provide-
asking for an
In
exception.
addition, with your shared driveway with the chambers next door, you have full access to the left side of your car, even if you pulled all the way back. There's no fence down that driveway. They're two driveways that are all made into one, essentially.
Yeah, I think probably in the 40s when the
Looks like you have
houses
good
were
access.
built, the cars were a lot smaller, though. I mean, if anyone's in the
No,
driveway, it's almost impossible to get out both sides.
We all
to be
recognize that
honest.
7 feet 8 is very narrow
It's very
parking space.
tight,
We all
yeah.
recognize that, and we're not going to require you to move the house.
No, I know. Thank you.
Or make it narrower.
Right.
We aren't going to do that. We wouldn't do that. But we are looking for a way to get two off-street parking spaces there, and we do allow them to be in tandem. You can have one car in front of the other. But it can be a difficult problem for people wanting to do second-story additions.
It's either that, or we make a finding to eliminate one of the parking spot requirements.
Pardon?
We eliminate the parking requirement in the front, give them one parking exception for the car in the front. So they're only required to provide one then, versus having this issue where they're making their own requirements and they need two parking spots. So I think we have some options. We can do whatever we feel
Okay.
like, but I think that in my mind, the precedent setting is getting a little concerning to me that, and we have had in the past, and I've mentioned this before, where somebody built their own exception, and we said, no, you can't build your own exception.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I don't know, this is a tough one, and I think that in this case, it's not going to fundamentally affect how you park, how you use your house, or the stairways actually, with what I'm proposing gives you more storage underneath it. And so, you can think about it, But we're not going to come out there as the parking police and say, wait a minute, you're parking there, you can't park there. We were told you, those are your 2 parking spots. You just have to provide them, you don't have to park out.
We're going to close the public hearing and bring it back?
Public hearing has been
for-
closed and reopened. We're back at the commission now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I asked the question I asked the question.
So it could go to either of you?
Okay. Well, I first want to note that this application is at a .51 floor area ratio, so it's, under the maximum by a small degree. I think it's a fairly simple and straightforward design and elegant for those reasons. It uses the same palette as the existing building. It's set back a good distance from the street in terms of the second-story addition. I think the windows are compatible. I think there's a staff recommendation to add a second window on the front facade, and I concur with that. So from a design review perspective, I have no issues with it. Curiously, I have sort of an opposite take on the parking in that I think, given the specifics of this lot, which with a substandard width in the side yard, that a front yard parking exception allowing parking in the front yard setback is appropriate in this case. Because you can have one car that is at a full car width. And then we've often granted exceptions when there is some intrusion into a parking space. In this case, it has a substandard width, but it's adjacent to a shared driveway so that one is not opening a door into a fence for that forward spot. So in this particular instance, I think a front yard parking exception is appropriate. And I see where Phil's going with the, stairway extending into the setback where one otherwise might be able to park a car.
Right.
But again, given the substandard width here, it's not where we really want them parking a car because of the substandard width.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, I actually support the application as it stands.
So that's interesting, okay. So you're inclined to say because it is so narrow and hard to use, that parking space along the side there, that
Yeah, rather than putting 2 cars there, we'll
rather
just
than
put
putting
the
2
one
cars
car
there,
there.
put
and
one
then-
car
and then-
there,
And then let
and then
the
go
second
ahead
one
and
be in the
grant,
front.
grant the exception, all right?
Well, I thought,
No, not, we're still requiring 2 cars. It's just
Yeah.
that we give an exception to allow
A front yard.
one of them to be in the front yard setback.
Yeah, all right, all right. Any other, Nick, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I don't know, I'm a little torn right now about the parking issue.
Yeah,
Well, let me let you think. I'll add a few more comments that I meant to, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
go for
missed
it.
these. So, the neighbor asked the question, why the parking exception? I think we've answered that through our discussion. How is the property line verified? The city has maps that show what where the projects sit on the property line, but until a survey is done, we're relying on, in this case, the designer's dimensions based on those city maps. So while we have every reason to suspect that the change in pavement between these 2 properties is indeed on the property line, it can only be verified with a survey. In terms of the addition that was made for bicycle parking at the back of the accessory building on this site, filling out that back corner would be 76.5 square feet. That would change the lot coverage from 41% to 43.2%. So it's still well under the 50% that's allowed. So I don't see it as something that would get in the way of approving this. Sheds are allowed up to 120 square feet, and we do allow accessory buildings to be built to the side and rear yard setbacks.
I'd like to, the idea is that, and it's kind of where I've been toying with this one, is we're not changing how they're going to be using the space, but we're granting an exception for the parking. So we're saying you can use the spaces, you still use it, but we're going to grant you 2 exceptions. Well, one exception is the width. The other is the second parking, and this is where I ran into problems saying,
But I don't think we're exempting it, we're just allowing a front yard setback
exception.
parking space,
It's an exception.
like the side yard.
But
like the
remember
width.
why, you got to go back and remember why we don't want parking in the front yard. We didn't want to legalize parking in the front yard, because then people start having 1 and 2 cars parked side by side, so then the front yards become nothing but a parking stall. So it's not going to change how they use the house. They're still going to park in the front yard. But to grant them the exception, I don't think there's a good enough reason for granting the exception. Given, yes, they're going to park 1 car where we say they need the exception. But through modest, minimal changes in this design, they can get their 2 parking spots, even though it's not a legal width. So we can, as a commission, say, look, we only have to grant 1 exception for this. And we need to stop granting so many exceptions when situations like this arise. It's not fundamentally changing how this house is going to use or how it looks or any function of this whole thing. It's not going to change a thing. This is a legal kind of battle we're facing up here, not out there, because parking is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in the city, and this commission grants a lot of exceptions and waivers. So in this case, is there a real good reason to grant an exception or a waiver? I don't think there is. And I think that we need to send a clear message. You cannot create your own exceptions anymore. You've got to use, and this is a case where there's a minor change that eliminates that exception.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree that we shouldn't have people creating their own problem. But in this case, they have an existing problem, which is the substandard width on those parking spaces. And I'm more comfortable accepting that substandard width for 1 space than I am for 2, which is what you're suggesting.
But again, it's not functionally how they're going to use these spaces. So we can say, we only granted 1 exception here. And
I
not
think we're
2.
granting 2 in either case.
No. The width is the one.
All right.
If they move the car forward, the parking towards the back, then they don't have a parking exception. So I don't know. This is kind of a situation that's coming up almost, I'm not going to say, it is every meeting, these type of discussions about
Yeah.
parking exceptions.
So I think we're in agreement that we're not willing to grant a reduction here
Right.
and only require 1 space. So that's something.
Right.
I think we're in agreement on that.
Well, it's not going to stop me from approving your project, or at least casting my vote for approval. The rest of these people, the rest of the commissioners can do what they want. This is an argument over granting you rights that now we have to continually grant throughout the city. That's a precedent. And that's where it concerns me, because more and more of these tighter lots are coming in front of us, and we're, it's going to come to a head at some point. Is 7/8 too small? Is 7/10 good enough? Or, that's just what discussions we're going to get into.
So I would say that I understand both your points, and that's somewhat in the middle. But first, if one were to move the stairway part of the building to the, I don't know which direction it is, but as you're looking
East, I think.
Okay, if you move it to the east, then
Just to the west.
okay,
No,
well,
just so you're clear.
move it in towards the towards the interior of the lot.
Yeah.
You would lose that nice thing that they've done. I have to say thing because I'm not an architect, where they've echoed the front porch gable, I think it is, or the front, the roof line of the front porch in that stairway area. Just if you see what I'm saying, there's the echo of the off center or
No, this is the only thing that changes right here, that lower part.
Right, but so the roofs align, and then the front roof goes down, and then these roofs align, the front roof goes down. That's kind of a neat little detail, and you would lose that if that stairway area went in. But, you know, architects can do other clever things, so maybe that's not a very good reason to not move it. But I hear you what you're saying. It's really kind of a question of I think I'm ready to approve it based on design, but grant the exception for the driveway width. But with regard to the front yard setback, it's not going to change the practice. And so what are we gaining by not granting the exception is the interesting thing. And yet, Phil is right that they've created the need for the front yard setback exception. So I think it's a tough one. Yeah. Oh well, maybe you could make. Yeah. Okay. So the design. I'm not too concerned about the design then.
Just teasing you.
Yeah. But. But I think I'm ready to approve it either way. I mean, with two exceptions or with one. I don't think I'm going to make a case, a federal case of it, if you were, about the two exceptions.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say.
All right. All right. So I'll make a few comments then, too. Let's see. First of all, on the design, I think I'll start there. I agree with the staff's recommendations and the notations on the designs about additional windows and articulation in the front. I'm a little bit concerned about how that will actually look. I think I would like to see it designed myself. My first reaction was, well, we need to see more of the final design. I think we could go along with staff's recommendation, but if we approve it, I think we should give some direction to staff and make sure it comes back to staff.
Would you like it to come back to you on the consent calendar?
Or it could come back on consent calendar. I am concerned about the windows in the front. I do think it does need another window in the front. I do think your comment in the staff report about the one window that is there may be a little bit disproportionate and out of proportion and may need to be a different size. And the same on the south side, that one bedroom has no windows in it at all on the second floor. That's not such a big deal to me, but you know, I think some high windows might be good up there anyway. The best view of this house is going to be from the back side. The back elevation is really quite attractive, the way the windows are set up and all of that. And I think the front elevation is missing something, even though the addition would be set back quite a ways on the lot. I would like to see the front, from a design point of view, I'd like to see the front elevation improved. I also, as I've been sitting here tonight and thinking about it, this may be a project where we do want to have a survey, do want to require a survey. It's so tight, and they do have that shared driveway. Maybe there's some easements or cross easements there. I don't know. I doubt it, but it's possible. I think it's probably going to be important here. I think it's a matter of inches, and I think it might be important for us to have a survey and to know if that really is 7 feet 8 inches, or 7 feet 5, or what the situation is there. So I'd be in favor, even though it is an extra expense for the applicant, and I'm sorry for that. I think that it would be good to have a survey done to know what the real dimensions are here. We do require it often, and I think it's appropriate. Okay, with respect to the parking exception, we may be tied on this tonight, and might not be able to move forward anyway. Because I'm inclined to go with Phil on that. I think that with modifications of the design, that we can. I think we should go ahead and say that there should be side yard parking here, and try to make the cars fit, make those parking spaces. And I think that I think Phil's pretty confident that, that some relatively minor modifications to design will work. And so I think I will go along with, I would support Phil on this one, so.
I think you raise an excellent point.
With that, pardon?
You raise an excellent point, because if this house shifts over a couple feet, or a foot.
Feet, I don't think it'll shift over feet, but.
No, it might shift over a foot, so there's a 3-foot
I don't
setback
know.
on one
I hope
side.
not.
Well, no, what I'm saying is then that 7'8" becomes 8'8", which makes legal parking.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
without a survey, we're kind of on,
yeah. Well, we know that it, usually we know where the property lines are, but not always.
well,
And-
I got a project out, just
Yeah.
recently done yesterday, where they put a foundation for a building in the wrong spot because
Yeah.
they took the
Yeah.
shots off the.
And we also have comments on here about the fences in the back and all of that too. And believe me, a survey is very useful. It happens all the time that fences get built on one side of the line or the other side of the line. Goal here would be to find out where the property line is, get the fences on the property line and have good neighbor fences. The costs are shared and work that out. That where the neighbors can get together and figure out how the fences should work for everybody.
Yeah, I think when a fence is less than 6 feet tall, there's no design review on it.
No.
It's just a mutual agreement
Mutual agreement.
Hopefully,
by,
ideally mutual
yeah.
agreement.
Yeah, mutual,
All right.
but the biggest, the most important issue is, well, where exactly is the property line? All right.
Can I ask the applicant a
I'll
question?
entertain a motion or further discussion.
I got something I want to clarify with the applicant.
Sure.
Can you come up for a second? It may put this thing to rest real quick. The existing auxiliary structure in the back, you've got the drawings for that? When that was submitted to the city to
Yes.
build that, or to legalize it, there were drawings done. Is that correct?
There was
no, we
a
don't have anything. That's
basic
just-
floor plan that was done showing a half bathroom and a closet.
Okay, nobody did a survey at that time,
No.
because they
Oh,
built it
okay,
right on the property
okay,
line, that's why.
It was existing
okay.
when the homeowner purchased it, and so
Oh, I
they.
see.
I was
Oh, you
hoping-
thought maybe that survey had been done
At
then.
the-
Oh, yeah,
At that
right,
predecessor
right.
did a survey that we
I
could have
understand.
relied on.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a,
One little thing, is for the surveyor thing. We have can you show me the first page, we have the Google picture there. Not option to move the property line. We have this building and this building. Otherwise, the solution where the line, because already you have the structures there.
so you're
I
making these,
don't think I understand. I'm
He's
sorry.
We don't need to take the dimensions because already they have this building here and this building here.
if I can,
Oh.
I can
They're in the
explain.
middle,
Oh,
Yeah.
the wall is there, it's
What he's
not,
saying,
no way.
he took the measurement from the middle of those two buildings.
yeah, okay,
Went over his, whatever
Okay.
it is, 37 feet.
okay.
Um,
Yeah,
And
I
that
see
was
that
the-
was your starting point. Yeah, well, that may be right. Yeah, it may be right.
The surveyor was
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, last meeting, we had a survey done on a building just like this, and it turned out one of the garages was on the neighbor's property.
yeah. It's not unusual. It does happen.
It does happen,
yeah,
so unfortunately.
Yeah. Is there a motion? So we
Well,
can
I would appreciate it.
move to
if-
approve, move to continue with conditions, move it, ask it to come back on consent. There are a variety of options here.
I'll take a stab at a motion, and we'll see if I can, in doing so,
Can I ask a
garner
question
your
first?
support. Yes.
Can we separate the two?
And with
The design
Stacy.
review and the parking exceptions into two motions?
No.
You don't want to do it, huh? You don't want to do it?
No, why? It's not going to make any difference.
It could. Because if they modify the stairs, well, then we could send it back just to staff review rather than having us look at it again.
I don't understand what you're doing. Why don't you take a shot
What
at a
what I'm
motion?
saying is, I move approval of the design review aspect of this application. And then we'll separate out the parking exceptions for a second vote. You're saying you feel that it all should be one and the same.
I do, because, you know, what we might decide on parking could have an impact on the design review.
Okay, here's my reasoning is if this comes back and they actually have 8'6" there, then they have their approvals.
I understand that there's a question of what the survey might reveal. I'm prepared to build that into my motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Give it a try.
this is more discussion than we typically have, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I will move approval of planning application 14-036, incorporating design review and a parking exception for a second-story addition at 941 Jackson, incorporating all of the conditions outlined in the staff report, and including the recommendation that additional windows be provided on the west and south facades, with additional conditions that a legal or a boundary survey be prepared to confirm the setbacks shown in the site plan, and if they are if the width of the driveway is different than what's indicated on the survey, that the project come back to the Planning Commission for further review and discussion. And just to clarify, the parking exceptions are for a width reduction of one of the parking spaces and a front yard setback parking exception for the second space.
So that's been moved. Everyone understand the motion? And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Nick has seconded. All right. Okay. Any discussion about how we want to go on this? I think we might have a tie vote. What happens then?
It's a loss.
What?
It loses.
It loses, yeah.
Well, and that's,
So Stacy's not here.
I'd like
too
to make a
bad.
recommendation that we table this for a date certain, continue to a date certain, let them come back with a survey.
You can
Okay.
put forward a substitute
Substitute
motion.
motion that we continue this to a date certain and let them do the survey and come back and answer our question.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I'll rescind my original
Okay.
motion and
All
second
right.
Phil's motion to continue to a date certain with a survey.
Okay.
Since we're making it
Yeah.
part of
Do
it
you understand
anyways.
what's happening? You're not, we have
You're not.
standards in the city that we have to live by.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah. Okay. What I did was continue this to another meeting for you to come back, look at the suggestions, look at the design, and either make changes, bring a survey in, or prove it different. If not, then you were going to lose tonight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this gives you the opportunity to go back and think about it and come back without having to file an appeal or paying for an appeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, your motion does not include the requirement for a survey.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
I think it does.
Oh, it does?
Yeah,
Oh,
and-
okay.
and To be
Yeah,
clear,
yeah.
most applications include a survey.
Yeah.
And when we have an issue like this, we will require a survey.
It's
That's-
important, yeah.
That's not unique to you. That's
Yep.
very common.
Right.
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 So that
Okay,
is why I made the motion to continue rather than to turn this down tonight.
Yeah, I didn't hear the survey as part of your motion
sorry, yeah.
in the
To
beginning.
come back and prove to us through. either-
Sorry, staff has a,
I'm sorry.
Since we're continuing it to a date certain, we need to determine if that will be July 9th or July 23rd. My recommendation would be July 23rd. That gives you a little additional time to get a survey prepared.
Right.
Yeah, the issue is that drawings have to be in 2 weeks before the meeting,
Right.
so you would only have a week and a half to prepare the documents.
Yeah, I think a date certain of July 23rd would be appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
And
The next date after that would actually be in September. We go in recess
that's
for the
not-
month of August.
Okay, so can you
That's
have it done by
unfortunate.
July 9th?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Okay.
Well, my suggestion is this, we move to July 9th, if we have to, we'll move it again. Okay,
Another option, your designer can represent you.
Yeah,
I think Phil's got a good idea. We'll just continue to July 9th. If it's not ready, it gets continued again.
yeah,
Right.
okay. I think that's
Okay.
good. Okay, so substitute motion, been seconded, has it been seconded?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did second it, all right. Okay, so what we're voting on then is a continuation to July 9th. The applicant can consider our comments, you have the option of revising the plans or coming back the way it is. We do want a survey. And if that summarizes the motion accurately, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one opposed. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. Okay. All right. So we couldn't make a decision on it. You'll come back on July 9th. You do need a survey, and we'll take another look at it then, and perhaps then we'll have 5 commissioners as well. All right. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the project on Cornell. Design review for a 2-level addition at 979 Cornell. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, the applicant is seeking design review approval for a 2-level addition at 979 Cornell. The subject lot is 5,000 square feet with an existing 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, a little over 1,800 square feet in area. The home was built in 1920 and was substantially added to in 1992. The original home was 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom. In the early 90s, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and an attached 2-car garage were provided. So parking is compliant, and there are 2 off-street parking spaces. The applicant is proposing to expand the existing first floor to accommodate an expanded kitchen and living room, as well as create a new master suite on the 2nd level. Altogether, this will result in a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, 2,550 square feet in area with a maximum building height of 26 feet 6 inches. So they are going for the full .55 FAR on a 5,000 square foot lot. The existing home is minimal traditional appearance, and it's going to be quite modern with the proposed design. On the screen is the existing elevation as the home is today. And below, you can see that the windows are going to change. All the divided lights are going away. The actual window shape will also be modified. They're putting this modern cable hand railing on the front. So it's going to be quite a change from its current appearance. There's an existing accessory structure in the rear yard, which is used for storage, that also counts towards the FAR. And with that, we recommend approval of the project. The applicant is here this evening to answer questions you might have.
Are there any questions of staff? This moment, none? Is the applicant present, or the applicant's architect representative? Would you like to come forward, please, and take the microphone, state your name for the record, and...
Good evening. My name is Antonio Lau. I'm the architect
Great.
for a record of the project here in 979 Cornell.
Okay. I guess you're able to answer any questions. Do we have any questions here of the architect?
Well, I guess I'd like to hear what his ideas are in creating this design.
Yeah.
How it
Yes, well, the client, who is also here present, came to us with the desire to enlarge the property, of course. A growing family, perhaps having an in-law moving in at some point, also have an extended family. We looked at the building. We thought that there were 2 components to it. The original structure, which was a very modest 1-bedroom you look at the screen on the left side of the lot, with an addition, as was reported done in 1992, that made it compliant with setbacks, and therefore it was somewhat set back further from the street than the original one. So in terms of the ideas that we had in this addition was just to, for one thing, keeping somewhat the scale of the building. So instead of adding a larger mass to the building that would just disrupt what is over there, we wanted to somewhat complement that. But at the same time, unify what appears to be kind of a bit of a disjointed piece of architecture that has been, both created in the 1920s, something, and then in 1992. We try to keep the addition towards the back of the building. There are a couple of reasons. The original structure, a portion of the original structure is not compliant anymore. It's non-conforming, in other words. It's actually within the setback. So the changes that occur there in the front of the building are mostly cosmetic. The porch remains in terms of the spaces. We're changing the fenestration on the windows so that altogether the building reads a little bit more uniform. Some things obviously couldn't be radically changed, say the location of the garage, the location of the windows in the front. However, in the back, we took a little bit of more of a, let's say, artistic license, you want to put it that way, to make it also much more open towards what is a very inviting backyard. It's actually quite large for Albany, that it has quite a large backyard. And also open it up, get as much of the eastern sun. We added a skylight, we added a two-story space on the inside so that, even if you go into it's actually has the scale of that one-bedroom apartment. Even on the two-bedroom addition, it still has that one-bedroom kind of scale. So with the new addition, we wanted to bring as much light as possible into the space, create actually a much more connection between the outdoors and the indoor towards the back. At the same time, we wanted to, as we keep, keeping some of the materials that are there, which is a painted shingle, we wanted also to introduce a cement plaster shingle, and try to blend both of them together so that some of the material that is existing wraps around the back. At the same time, some of the new addition also try to articulate both of those two things together. You notice there's a bit of an asymmetrical roof there sitting in the back, and the reason we went through a number of different elevations, and we realized that the more we try to do that, the reading of these two separate buildings kept coming back. So we decided to have something that, while at the same time keep the two volumes and the scale to get separate, it still reads somewhat uniform on the rear elevation. I don't have one here, but the rear elevation had this kind of sawtooth type of articulation that try to unify somewhat the rear facade. The interior spaces. One of the purposes was to open up the ground floor as much as possible. Also reconcile the fact that the original house in 1924 was 24 inches above ground. The new addition garage is actually on grade. And the second floor of the addition is actually about 10 feet above the garage, which puts you about 6.5 feet above the original house. So there was a little bit of acrobatics that we had to do to get the stair to have a second floor that will actually go from one side to the other, given the difference in height. One is a slab and grade, one is actually a frame structure. So altogether, we're still refining some of the specific details of the finished material and trying to, respect what is there, but at the same time, just trying to bring it forward to something that is more in line with what our clients desire and, and also in the character of how, City of Albany or these new buildings are evolving.
Okay. Any questions?
No,
I guess I
that's
have
great.
one. I have one small one.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One small one, I think. It looks to me like the garage door wouldn't change from the existing. It's not a different design for the garage door. Is that right? Am I right on that?
Yeah, at this point, yes. I mean, we obviously would like to.
And how about the siding on, so the siding you're proposing in that area on the front there around the garage door, will that sort of be the same as what's on the existing?
Yeah, so the siding is a painted shingle now.
Okay.
So it wraps around the back, and we actually, if you look at the extension from where the rainwater leader
Right.
is in the back, we're continuing that on the lower volume, which is in plane with the existing building. Now, the second story sets back, steps back, as you see in the upper right-hand corner with the stucco. And, part of the reason why it's set back is because the floor height there is actually higher on the addition than it is on the existing building,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah,
of
I understand. Okay.
it needs to be part of the other building as well. Yeah.
Okay, that answers my question on that. Anything else? Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, not right now. If we have others, we'll call you back up.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission tonight on 979 Cornell?
916,
Oops, what did I say?
was it?
979?
Oh, sorry.
That's, okay. All right, I don't see anyone coming forward. No one for this public hearing. Okay, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start?
Well, I have some thoughts, and you're right, it is 979. Not sure where I got that. As was noted in the staff report, we're looking at a 0.55 floor area ratio, which is at the maximum allowed. And when that happens, we look to the applicants to mitigate impacts and provide exceptional design. I think the improvements that are being proposed here are, I like the way that it's unifying the project. The only thing I find that sort of isn't in keeping with the spirit of that is the keeping of the existing garage door. It's just not a handsome garage door at the moment, and I think that's the one area where maybe some attention could be paid. Possibly, paint could do the job. But I think a more modern garage door, in keeping with the character of the rest, could be a good place to go. So I'll throw that out there for further discussion. I like the way that the architect proposes to add a second gable. I think that's in an effort to keep it low and break the overall massing down into smaller pieces. It does have a higher floor level based on the way that was described. I think the device of having a different pitch on the one side was conscious and nicely executed. It does happen toward the interior of the site, so it sort of works, in terms of its impact on neighbors. So in many ways, my inclination is to approve the design review. It's completely within setbacks and other requirements, and I think it will hold together as a handsome project. And maybe we could hear from the applicant in terms of what their plans are or intentions behind leaving the existing garage door are.
Any other?
I'll go because my comments will be very brief and that I really don't have any comments. I think it's a fine project and nothing to add.
Yeah, I'm fine with the design. It's unusual enough that I hope you're able to pull off the juxtaposition between the two styles. I might have wanted to see maybe even a third material added to accent some of it, but that's just me. Yeah, I'm fine with the design. I think that
All right.
it's interesting enough, and I think the roof slopes actually, the different pitches are interesting.
Yeah, I echo everyone's comments. Like David, like everyone, I think the design is very attractive, very handsome. I like the way you've tied those two different buildings of different era together, or two different parts of the building together. I think that I like the front porch extension you've done, making the front porch bigger. I think that'll be very nice, a very nice place. The only thing that stood out in my mind was the garage door, and I am interested if you do have any thoughts about that and would be open to a different, to replacing that door with something of a different design, just what your thoughts might be. Why don't you come forward? We have a microphone up here.
Just a little bit of any story about remodels that things always start a little modest and they keep growing. So certainly our desire would be to change the garage door or treat it in a way so that it is more in the language that we're trying to adapt to the house. Obviously, there's budget issues to that, right? A garage door is a $5,000 item that, if we have to make a choice where to put it, we'll probably want to put it on the older portion of the house, right? The porch and things like that. So there's always a desire, and we would like to actually change the garage door to something that will read more contemporary. An alternative would be to put something in front of the existing garage door, since it's always like a frame with an infill panel. Just change the panel to something that it is more contemporary. So we're looking at the different ways of obviously making it somewhat economical, somewhat will fit our budget. But yes, I'm in concurrence with everybody's saying that the garage door is obviously out of sync to what we're trying to do as an existing one.
If I can, those usually are panelized, and you could pop out panels and replace them. You could pop a couple panels out, put some green glass, aluminum frame, something to pull it into the existing design. So I don't think you have to replace the whole garage door. You can modify that one to be something nice.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I hope. I think it's what you're thinking.
Any other questions?
Yeah, some treatment like that.
Some treatment where you can pull the panels out.
Right. So
And replace them.
I have a concern, which is that the existing porch and house are within the front yard setback currently, which would normally be 15 feet. Looks like it's 9'3" from the property line to the front of the house. And I think we're allowed to go 6 feet to a porch, but is that right? Yeah.
6-foot encroachment.
Thank you. But if we take that 9'3" and subtract the 3'6" of the expanded porch, we're left with 5'9", which is unfortunately less than 6 feet. So I wonder if that, as that front porch is rebuilt, if it can comply with the allowable front porch.
Notice the building is skewed on the lot a little bit.
Yeah, which
do have a
is
problem
what
at that corner,
brings that corner
yeah.
forward a tiny bit.
So what are the options there? Design it so that it's at least more than 6 feet from the property line?
Yeah, as long as it complied with the provisions in the encroachment table, so it can encroach up to 6 feet. So they could conceivably cut it back a little further to comply.
It's only 3 feet now.
Okay.
3 feet,
I don't have enlarged plans.
3'6"
Oh, I see.
overall.
in depth.
Yeah, I think it was interesting where the dimension was taken, but that's wasn't taken on the shorter side, it was taken on the big side. But, I think that can be made a condition that our approval that it meet our front yard setback requirement.
Yeah, and it could be that the wing wall on the north corner has to be held back a little bit, or ideally the one on the south is made to match, but that'll get worked out.
Okay. All right. So then I would accept the
Oh, I
motion.
see.
I think that's a good catch, David.
Right? I'll move approval for design review, planning application 14-035 for a 2-level addition at 979 Cornell Avenue, incorporating all of the conditions outlined in the staff report, noting that the front porch shall maintain a 6-foot setback as allowed by our code.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And you've heard our comments as well about the garage doors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is there a second to the
I'll
motion?
second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. No one opposed? All right. So your project's been approved. There's a 14-day appeal period, which I think ends on July 9th. Good luck with the project as you move forward.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. The next item on our agenda tonight is the amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code related to digital billboards. And do we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This is an application, or excuse me, this is a proposed amendment that has come back to you from the June 9th City Council meeting. At the June 9th meeting, the City Council gave direction to begin the procedural process of reconsidering some recently adopted amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code that would have allowed digital billboards. The history of this dates back to 2013 when the City Council was beginning the planning process for a new Public Works Service Center on Cleveland Avenue. As part of the project, a package of financing mechanisms were proposed, and one of those would have been to lease a portion of the site to Clear Channel for a placement of a digital billboard. The amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code went through the Commission, went to the City Council, and were approved and became part of the Municipal Code. Following that, the plans evolved and more detailed plans became available, and at several recent City Council meetings, considerable community concern has been expressed, in particular about the digital billboards and the impact on residents along Cleveland Avenue in particular. There's also some concern expressed regarding the environmental impacts on nearby wetlands and so forth. At the June 9th council meeting, the direction was given to bring it back to you. Procedurally, the commission does need to make a recommendation to the city council. In order to keep the Public Works Service Center project moving forward, we have modified the scope of that project, basically reducing the square footage from roughly about 20,000 square feet to something in the neighborhood of 15,000 square feet, which eliminates the need for the additional income that would have come out of the digital billboard. And as a result of that, we feel like we can go forward with that project and no longer need the digital billboard part of the project. The amendments would provide assurances to the community that the potential for a digital billboard won't come back at a later stage without, again, full community input into an amendment to the municipal code. The changes that are before you are almost exactly with one minor change, just kind of erasing what was done earlier this year. And there was just one definition that we left back in that seemed to make sense to keep it in on page, second page of the, on the bottom of the first page, clarifying what a fully animated sign is and leaving in the phrase an on-premises identification sign. But everything else that would have allowed a digital billboard would be eliminated. Again, off-premises signs would be prohibited. All the development standards that the commission worked through would also be eliminated. And basically, we'd go back to the status quo that we had prior to the beginning of the process. Following commission action, it will return to the city council probably next month at the city council's next second meeting in July, which I believe, if visualizing the calendar in my head, is July 21st. Would be a potential date for a first reading on amendments for consideration by the city. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? I might have a couple. Does this have to come back to us? Can't the city council just change this? I mean, does it have to? It has to have. Are we in a sort of advise and consent role here then?
There is a step for the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider amendments to to the code.
And that's would be required in the municipal code then?
Yeah, it's because it's part of Chapter 20 Planning and Zoning, so it falls under your purview, in
Okay,
which case you
okay.
have to
And
review
so what
and
they're
make a
really asking us
recommendation.
to do is to undo all the work that we did in 3 meetings, or 2 or 3 meetings, 3 meetings, I think, to set the stage for this. Now they want us to undo it. All right.
Well, and
Welcome to planning.
if I remember correctly, our initial recommendation was to not do this.
Right.
So in many ways, we're going back to our original recommendation.
Please. Wait a minute.
You won an Academy Award.
We don't want outbreaks of applause, and that kind of thing. We really don't. Probably I can see a number of people here. You probably all want to speak on this item, and you will have your chance. But we want to keep the meeting as orderly and as quiet as possible, and we appreciate it if everyone listened to what everyone else has to say. Respect those speakers. Thank you. All right. Any other questions of staff? Okay. Now, let's see.
I have one question for staff.
Okay.
Given that the other things that are on our agenda, if we poll the commission on their feelings with this, and we still have to take public input, but maybe the public input would be shorter.
Would you like to reduce the amount of time allotted to speakers?
No,
Is
what
that-
I'd like to do is poll the commission to see if we have any problems with moving a recommendation to remove this and send it forward to the
Well,
council.
I think that would be up to the chair, whether he wanted to procedurally do that.
Okay.
Well, then-
I'm happy to, let's see, is it appropriate? There's no other applicant here. I should open the public hearing.
Yeah, I do have 7 speaker
We
cards.
do have 7 speaker cards. I am perplexed by this, and I probably don't, I'm not in favor of moving this forward. So that's myself,
Not-
anyway.
not
Yeah.
Staff recommendation you're against.
Pardon?
You're opposed to staff's
The
recommendation.
staff recommendation is to make the changes back. I want to keep that language in the zoning ordinance. I think we've done a lot of work on this, and I think that the option for having the digital billboard down there in the CMX district is appropriate. It's been studied, and I think we should keep it there. And I was surprised that the council decided to move ahead with the project, downsize the project, rather than look at, try to move forward with this. So that's my position on
I
it.
stand corrected, so let's move
And
forward to public hearing.
I can like to talk about that more later. So, yeah. I think, with that, I think I should open the public hearing. And I will open the public hearing. So the first speaker?
The first 3 speakers are Maria Ling, Chris Kirkham, and George Ray. And if you don't mind lining up as your name is called, that would be great.
Every speaker has 3 minutes. If you take less time, that's fine.
Yes. My name is Maria Lane. Hi again. I was here before. Hi, Nick. So I'm at 545 Pierce Street. So as you can see from my T-shirt, I am opposed to this digital billboard. I was very happy that the city council voted not to install the digital billboard at 540 Cleveland at the Public Works Building. But I don't think we should stop there. I understand the original zoning code was changed in order to allow for the digital billboard installation a few months back. Now that the project is no longer in existence for the digital billboard on that site, I think the code should go back to remove from the entire zoning code. The CMX zoning is mostly along the Albany shoreline. I think Albany shoreline is very beautiful, and I don't think we should destroy that. And I just recently came back from a business trip in Puerto Rico. It's very, very beautiful, very, very green. Yet, taking the shuttle, driving on the freeway, all of a sudden, I saw several digital billboards, and that reminded me of our cause here. And I was trying to take pictures of natural scenic line, the ocean, the greenery, the Amazon forest, and all of a sudden, 3 digital billboards came along. And I was in shock, and I go, oh my gosh, too bad they don't have enough residents like we did to speak against the digital billboard. So those 3 pictures basically was trashed because it was totally destroyed. So I think that the City of Albany should take a stand, and we should be the model city along Highway 80 that takes a stand against digital billboard, and have our neighboring city look up to us and say, okay, we really need to clean up our beautiful shoreline, and this does not belong here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Kirkham. I'm a resident of Albany at 545 Pierce Street. I'm also one of the founders of StopTheDigitalBillboard.org. We have a couple hundred members in that organization, and we've been signing petitions that were addressed to the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm just going to send a blank petition to all 4 of you right now. So I put all the petitions on a digital disc to save trees. I'm not really sure who to give that to, but we collected 326 signatures. And so basically the petition says, and I'm going to cut out some of the things just for brevity, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm signing this petition because I oppose, and then moving down, I request that you remove all of the Albany Municipal Code amendments passed in March that allow digital billboards. So that's 326 residents who are asking that you basically undo that ordinance. And some of the reasons are placed here, that we would have to stare at digital billboards if we're enjoying the shoreline, if we're up on Albany Hill looking down to the coast. Of course, people live along the shore where these digital billboards would go, and they would shine into our units, despite the very subjective clause in the ordinance about the billboards facing away from residential areas. You'll also find on this disc there's a PDF with the name of a geometry, and I've designed a document that shows that most digital billboards are not configured in a way where people behind them cannot see the face. And I tried to explain that when I spoke to you back in March, and it was hard to do. That PDF will explain it better. Basically, like for my unit at 545 Pierce Street, I can see into the back structure of the Pacific East Mall digital billboard. So I'm behind kind of the back plane of it, and yet still I can see the face of the lit billboard. It shines into my daughter's room. I'm bombarded with commercial images all day long, and I just, that's not something I want to choose to have come into my life in my home. I think they cheapen our environment, they commercialize our city, and that's just not what Albany is. It's not what Albany stands for. So now that there's not a need for this digital billboard, at least for the city, I really ask that you undo this ordinance. And thank you for considering it. So what do I do with my CD? I give it to, okay. Thanks for your time.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So the Pacific East Mall, is it that the back side of the billboard is actually illuminated as well?
No, that digital billboard is a set, it's 2 digital billboards in an isosceles triangle, and the back is just an open kind of view into the back sides of the 2 digital billboards. So like from my unit at 545, I can see into the truss and the back sides of the digital billboards, and yet still I can see the lit face as well. So it's really, it's a common misunderstanding that, oh, if you're behind the digital billboard, you won't see the lit face. That's not true. And that's very clearly depicted on a PDF I've put on this CD and also on our website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's George Ray. I also live at 545 Pierce Street for 14 years. I agree with what both speakers have said before. I agree with the staff recommendation to please go back to the original code. We live in Building 3 on Pierce Street. A billboard in front of our condos probably would not affect us. But the billboard in Richmond, at night, our bedroom changes colors every 20 seconds. And we're behind it. The west side of Albany is the most beautiful side of Albany. It's the first impression anyone gets when they drive down the freeway. The Bridgewater, while this was not a city problem, 5 years ago, each unit owner had to come up with a $26,000 special assessment for a reconstruction and beautification project. That's a lot of money. It was over $2 million. In that budget was a beautification where we repainted the Bridgewater. It's beautiful now. It's more environmentally perfect with the hill, the grasses, the trees. It fits in much nicer now. Finally, our property values are starting to come up again. You start throwing these obscene billboards in front, those values are going to go down again, and everyone's going to lose. We're better than Emeryville. We're better than Vallejo. We're better than Richmond. Keep it green, please. We do not need digital billboards in this town. I appreciate your hard work that you've done, and I appreciate the considerations you've done, and I highly recommend you follow the staff recommendations. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next three speakers are Dee Jacobson, Judith Carrillo, and Ginny March.
Good evening. My name is Dee Jacobson, and I am an owner and resident at 555 Pierce Street in Albany. And I am very glad that the City Council chose to listen to the community and stop their negotiations with Clear Channel and sent the recommendations to you regarding these digital billboards. They're very harmful. I'm not going to repeat all of the things. I agree with everything that's been said so far. It affects, it uglifies the views. It's damaging to the marshland, to wildlife. There are those that say that it increases traffic accidents. There's just a whole host of problems with these billboards. And what I hope you will do is walk back the zoning changes that you may have worked very hard at the time under the direction, but I hope you'll walk them back and let's close that door so that we don't have to revisit this issue again in the future. Thank you.
I'm Judy Carrillo at 545 Pierce. I don't want to repeat anything that's already been mentioned in terms of environment, et cetera. I'm a brand new resident of Albany. I came from Orange County. I sold a 7-bedroom house, and I looked very closely to which community I wanted to move into up here. And I felt, from what I researched, Albany was very progressive. I was shocked the month after I moved in to find out a digital billboard was going to be right outside my beautiful view of what is on your emblem of this beautiful city. It's a blight, as everyone's mentioned. I'm concerned about property values. Property values will go down, which also makes revenue for the city go down. Please roll back all the hard work you did. I was impressed with all the details. I read through all the many detailed language in the work that you did. But we don't need that here in Albany. And I am concerned about the accidents, as people have mentioned, wildlife, et cetera. Thank you.
I'm Ginny March. I live at 555 Pierce Street, Unit 1001. We have a direct view onto the freeway. The proposed formerly proposed digital billboard, and also the one that Richmond has put up very close to the county line. Mr. Donaldson, I was very concerned about your comments. I don't know what the rest of the commission members feel, but one of the things that has happened in the process that you put so much effort into is I don't think you listened to all the people that live at the front door of Albany. We provide a good percentage of the tax money and the population and the votes. And I'm not making a threat, I'm just making a statement that the outpouring that the city council endured was something I think was unexpected, and that's very unfortunate because they realized that our communities were a force to be reckoned with. Please follow your staff recommendations and think about the people who live at the front door of Albany. Thank you.
The next three speakers are Rashid Nasim, Robert Cheesty, and Saul Strand.
Good evening. My name is Rashid Nasim. I am the board member for the HOA for 555 Piers Gateview, representing 487 units. Approximately 1,500 residents live there. I have talked to many of them. I would say at least I have talked to 65 people, and I did not have one person saying it's a good idea to have a billboard. Whatever reason it was, the ordinance was passed or the law was changed that we can have a billboard, I think it sneaked in some way. We never got a chance to come out and speak. We didn't know about it. Even the presentation which was given to us for this particular billboard, which is in question, which is now no longer will be done, it was a very small billboard thing was on the bottom of the page, which anybody could have missed. So residents are not happy the way this was all handled. We appreciate you all working hard. We live in a city which we call it urban village by the bay. Urban villages do not have billboards, especially the digital billboards. Digital billboards are nuisance for the people living around them, around the billboard. Only thing they can help you is decrease your property value, and we are not happy about it. We would appreciate if you guys look at this seriously and turn back the clock and bring that law back. It's not helping us, and we will be here no matter what happens and put the pressure. We came on the board meeting, on the council meeting, city council meeting. I don't know how many people were here talking to them, and it was unanimously approved by the council that they will not proceed with the project because of this reason. So we'll appreciate that.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I'm Robert Chasey. I'm a longtime resident of Albany. I think I came out here around the time Abe Lincoln signed the land grant colleges bill, establishing, among other things, the University of California over here in Berkeley. And I'm here speaking on behalf of not only myself, but the Citizens for East Shore Parks, the Sierra Club, and Audubon Society. I think digital billboards are a really bad idea. They not only detract from the beauty around us, but in this particular case, they reflect onto a aquatic preserve that we have put in trust in perpetuity in the city of Albany in the 1980s. That's what that Albany Marsh is. And the city had the wisdom to protect it, and the city had the wisdom to move forward at that same period to create the first leg of the East Shore State Park, which was the Albany Bulb and the Albany Lands. And this issue of billboards in Albany didn't actually crop up in the last few months, although you've been dealing with the issue of digital billboards in the last few months. Albany took the position years ago, and this was back again 3 decades, to stop billboard construction and to eliminate all the billboards in Albany. So billboards are a blight. I mean, everybody who sees them understands that. And digital billboards are kind of a blight on steroids. We want to be able to make Albany as beautiful and as attractive as possible. I think that we should support the staff recommendation. I think staff worked hard to figure out how to make this project viable economically without the income that would come from the digital billboards. Even if they hadn't, I would say go back to the citizenry and ask for the support for the municipal buildings and structures that you need. Albany citizens have never denied the city when a proposal's been put to them. The voters have always backed them when they make any kind of sense at all. So think about Albany as the Albany you want it to be. And I understand, I actually am very sympathetic, having done some time in public service myself and in the capacities in the city that I did. And I understand the concern about trying to balance budgets and those issues. But to allow for this as the way to do it, I think is a wrong-headed approach. And I don't disrespect the work you did. I understand you were tasked with doing a job and you addressed it. But I think that you had it right, as Mr. Arkin suggested in the beginning, not to be in favor of this. And I hope that you'll support the staff recommendation and that we will eliminate the possibility of billboards and LED billboards in the city of Albany. Thank you very much.
Saul Strand, 555 Pierce Street. I've been there for almost 38 years, so I predate the previous speaker, I think, by a year or more. I would like to address 2 points that are unique, I think, from what I've heard so far tonight, and that is that along the Bay Trail that's supposed to circle the entire bay, from the Albany portion of the trail, the proposed billboard would glare with the light right onto the trail and set a dangerous precedent for other cities. So I think the Sierra Club and the other environmental organizations should work with the other cities around that circles the bay to try and get all of their cooperation to prohibit billboards and digital billboards that face the bay and the trail. And so I think that would make a nice starting statement that the Sierra Club and others could organize and proceed with the other adjoining cities to get their cooperation so that it truly is a trail that is an asset to the entire Bay Area. The other point I'd like to make with respect to visual view sheds that was made in previous EIRs that the city has had done, like the one with the Caruso project, they listed all the 12 view sheds in the city of the waterfront. One of them that wasn't really developed was the Overlook Park from Albany Hill because they said it was blocked by eucalyptus trees. But I served on a committee, volunteer committee for the Albany Hill trees and the Creekside Park about 25 years ago. And one of the things that we had these ideas, and one of the things that came up is that we should have a future trail that connected Catherine's Walk onto the hill and then down to Pierce Street. And now that the proposed park in this interim 25 years has been developed, if a future planning commission would be approving a building on the 11-acre vacant parcel, they would be including easements that would allow those trails and opening up that view shed from Overlook Park that might be expanded. And so that would be a future goal of the city to create a really attractive amenity for the city of Albany in terms of hiking trails that leads to a local park. And so I would think about those options that you would have in the future if you make an initial strong statement that the Bay Trail should not have lit billboards facing the public commons. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
I have no more cards.
No other speakers at this moment? All right. Then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. I think Maybe I should start on this one. I was concerned about the council's action. I wasn't at the council meeting. I was surprised by the action. I had started out on this, not a fan of billboards. I started out on this saying, what are they thinking when this first came to us? And then the more that we looked at it and the more that I got into it, I came around to think that the digital billboard that was proposed at the proposed Public Works building was a good idea. It had a lot of advantages for Albany, and I'm not going to change my position on that. Let me talk about that a little bit. There are a couple of things. Where should I start? One of the more important things to me was that the deal that they had worked with Clear Channel, and these would be franchise agreements, so this could be done again, was that it would remove the billboards that we have on Solano Avenue. I think that's a real big advantage to the city. And I can speak from experience on that. Years ago, I worked on the D Street widening project for the city of Hayward. I did environmental review on that. It was a straightforward internal street widening project, and at the intersection of Foothill Boulevard and D Street, there was a business, a transmission shop, and had a billboard on top. And the city went to the owner of the transmission shop and said, we'd like to buy your property to improve the intersection, make this intersection. He said, fine, I'm thinking of retiring anyway, let's do a deal. And they did, and he said, but I do get income from that billboard on top, and so we need to deal with them. So they went to go to the billboard company. You do not get rid of billboards easily. That's what I learned there. This is a big deal. The billboard company said, no, we're not going to do a deal. You can't buy us out. You have to condemn us. So they had to go to court, and they had to take a condemnation action in it. And the billboard company, as compensation, wanted something like all of the income from that billboard for the next 50 years, because it was fixed, it was there, and that was going to be that was their business. And it delayed the project. It took a couple of years to litigate it, delayed the D Street widening project by a couple of years. At the time, construction costs were soaring. It cost the city of Hayward millions of dollars, several $1 million, plus the damages, whatever the settlement agreement was, to get rid of that billboard. Looked like a simple thing. It wasn't. These billboards are there to stay. And that particular spot of where those billboards are right now are one of the nodes in our plan. I think the best thing to do would be to take advantage of this potential option, or at least leave this on the books, so that we might be able to work out something again with Clear Channel that would lead to the ability to have them voluntarily remove those billboards. Those billboards are going to be an impediment to the development of Solano and San Pablo and that node, I think, for years to come. The other thing is, I was initially opposed. I said, ugh. I missed the meeting where you guys made your final motions to send this to the council. I was glad I missed the meeting because I didn't want to vote in favor of billboards, but I also didn't really want to vote against the revenue that the city council would be getting from this. The rent that this is worth right now is $150,000 a year, roughly, and probably inflated over time. That's a lot. That's a lot. The city cut the project, the Public Works project, which was a good one. We did design review on that. They cut it by 5,000 square feet. 25% of that building was cut out because of this loss of revenue. $150,000 a year can easily, or can be leveraged through bonds and whatever, can support $2 million in capital investments. That was the value that the council staff report said was the value that they cut off on the Civic Center project. I think that's roughly equal to a parcel tax of $20 a year, and we have parcel tax, a lot of them. When I looked at my tax bill, there's one for 1928, I see. It's for the medical life support system we have in Albany. I looked on the city budget, and as best I can tell, that $1928 a year, and my property taxes raises $146,000. Confirmed. That is a lot of income. That is equal to a parcel tax around town of $20. We can do this. The environmental problems and the design problems, I'm convinced, are manageable. Convinced of it. This is not the atrocity at Ranch 99. That was a super bright billboard. It's way high. And if you look around to the signs that really bother you, you'll see that their height is very important. The Ranch 99 one, even the Golden Gate Field sign, is very noticeable because it's so high. The City Council staff report said we can lower the height to below the height limit and lower the height so that it's only 2 or 3 or 4 feet, I think it said, over the height of the Public Works building, only 3 or 4 feet higher, by undergrounding utilities for that segment. So Clear Channel said, okay, we'll drop it down. The only thing that's bothering us are the utility lines there. Dropping it down would have huge benefits. This is a workable thing. We can design this thing, we could condition this thing so that it would work. I'm convinced of it. I know quite a bit about lighting. I did the environmental review on Tom Bates Field. One of the issues there was, aren't those bright lights going to be very dangerous and upsetting for the rafting ducks and destroy the environment out there on the shore? We looked at it very, very closely. Modern lighting design was going to be less bright than the signs, the street lights that Golden Gate Fields had out there, where Tom Bates Field is now, been there for 30 years. They cast more light on the water shoreline than the athletic fields do now, and it's been confirmed by measurements. So we could reduce the height of the billboard. It is possible to put one behind a building. They're angled so that there'll be very, very, very few homes or residents in any of those buildings. Any of the buildings you live in will have a view of them. And why can't they be shielded just like they do with the lights at Tom Bates Field on the edges? I think that they could be designed so that there wouldn't be any impacts. And if not, then I wouldn't vote for it. I think that we do need to do that. I'm not terribly concerned about the impacts of the billboard on the marsh. I think that is a red herring. I know from my work I did on looking at Tom Bates Field about how these lights are. I know that between the billboard and the marsh is Interstate 580 with 40,000 cars a night going by there. I know there are many other sources of very glaring light down there right now that are uncontrolled, unshielded, and I would dare say that would cast more light on the environment of the marsh. And I'm a birder. I'm very sensitive to that. I don't want to damage that habitat than this billboard would. The way I read it in the staff report, the way I've understood it, is that the billboard would be 3 lumens brighter than ambient light. Well, that means at night it's not going to be very bright. It's not going to be very bright. And you drive along the freeway. I've been looking at billboards now quite a bit. Driving along Interstate 80 there, I noticed the other night that the CBS billboard in Berkeley is a digital billboard. You see the ads there all the time. My perception, just driving by looking at it, is that the sign on Floor Dimensions, which is an Albany sign, internally lit red letters, I perceive it as being brighter than the digital billboard, which is, they're a few hundred yards apart. But my feeling driving along there is that the perfectly legal digital sign, undigital, illuminated letters on Floor Dimension store are brighter than the digital billboard. I've looked at other billboards down in Oakland, along by the Coliseum and all of that. And again, I say, the reason they stand out is because the one by the Coliseum is so high. You can't miss it. It's just so high. It's not the brightness of it. In fact, there's one down there that I don't even know I looked at it, I'm not sure whether it's vinyl or whether it's digital. It doesn't seem to change, so it might be plastic, you know, a regular billboard. I think that this is technology. We worked hard on trying to figure out how to make this work. I think it is something that the city of Albany could do. And I know there's a lot of concerns out there, and I know here we have the speakers here. I know there were more speakers. I'm sure there were more speakers at the council meeting. People are very alarmed about the notion of this. But I want to say we should look at the reality of it. It is something that could be done. It could be done with minimal impacts, and potential financial benefits to the city are significant. I was really surprised that the council changed their mind. And now I'd say, well, let's leave this option in the code, and let's you know, we have a park coming up there. Here is $2 million worth of funding for that park, just sitting there. And it would go on for a long time, forever. Not forever, but it'd go on for a long time. It's a terrific source of free money for Albany. I think it would be a mistake to undo this work that we've done. That's my feeling on it. I'm assuming I don't have the votes to move that way, but I would really like you to rethink this over. I'd really like you to go back to, maybe send this back to the council if you want, and say, look, let's take a rational look at this. Let's see if it's possible to do something. And this is a good, really good potential source of revenue for the city, and we have some needs right there. I mean, that park, could it be dedicated to the funds, revenues be dedicated to that park space that is being planned down there? I don't know, but I think it'd be sure be good. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Anyone else like to speak up? Mm-hmm.
Well, Doug, I appreciate your giving a little bit of the history and also explaining in great detail why you find yourself in favor of it.
Yeah.
Because I think those are rational reasons that you were able to outline. And when he refers to, you know, the billboards that are, you know, in downtown, they are two of them, and they are remarkably the only two billboards in Albany. They are on the roof of Montero's, which is the crossroad of San Pablo and Solano Avenues. And, you know, when this first came to us, as I mentioned earlier, we were very much opposed to it and you know, crafted a statement to go to the city council that was basically going to say, no, we actually want to go so far as to say that digital billboards are prohibited. And the message we got back was that they're going to do it anyway, no matter what we tell them. So we said, okay, given that, let us put some zoning regulations on this, which is the light levels, how long the message is up there, how they will be screened from properties. And I think it was staff who noted that this would be a swap for the two that are on Montero's. So with all of those reasons, we reluctantly put it forward to them, and it was approved. One of the reasons that I was able to be in support of it is because it was located at 540 Cleveland, which is central in the CMX district, and it is possibly one of the few locations in that district where it could be structured and screened in such a way that it would not be visible from any of the existing residences at 545 or 555 Pierce. Without this specific project moving forward, the ordinance as it is currently written allows for that to happen anywhere within the length of the CMX district that fronts onto 580, and it's along 580 only, if I understand it correctly. I'm happy to get this language out of our ordinance and return to where we were originally. And if it takes action on this body to get that ball rolling again, I'm happy to be one to push that ball.
Okay. No, I agree with everything that's said. I think, Doug, well thought out thoughts there. And I just actually want to put a different spin on it. Is it really, we don't have the votes on the city council to keep this going forward. So with that, I'm thinking that it's kind of a Don Quixote type battle you're fighting here.
I'd like to push back the city council.
Yeah,
So you understand that.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that, and I applaud you for your stance here, and I think that it's a well thought out stance. And I don't.
I also think, tell me if I'm wrong on this, Dave. You might know, or maybe you. I'm assuming that the language in there that calls for a franchise agreement means that they would need another permit from the city. So that I'm assuming that that we would have other leverage to stop, say, Albany Steel from going into the billboard business. That the franchise agreement, we could say, no, we don't want you. We want you to do a franchise agreement on Albany property or at the space we designate. I'm assuming that could be worked that way. It's just, this is more than just a zoning approval. A franchise agreement is like a contract.
Yeah, I think you're going to agree with that.
Yeah, just confirm that in addition to a franchise agreement, any new sign would require a design review approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which then in turn could be appealed to the City Council.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was saying, this was a tough one because we were finding a lot of reaction to items that we hadn't even studied yet, and that is the lighting. One of the funniest stories I had was I was doing a presentation in Berkeley, and one of the commissioners there started going off on electronic billboards, and she was saying, how could Albany ever have let that CBS billboard go in? And they turned to her and said, that's Berkeley. It's not Albany. Albany doesn't have any electronic billboards. And they said, hey, great for Albany. They were able to get away from us. So in that sense, I think that in this case, I am opposed to moving this forward in the sense that, as a positive, I would like to see this withdrawn from our zoning ordinance. And if it ever comes up again, it comes up again. So I don't think, this may not be a fight that's, in 5 years, maybe back in front of us. Well, the commission, hopefully not me. So I think that just because we move it forward now doesn't mean that in a couple of years somebody's going to come forward. The other precedent, and I'm big on precedents, as you can tell, I'm concerned that we say, okay, this is okay for this site, and the next site comes in and goes, well, wait a minute, you got it there, you made all the findings and everything, we want one on our site, or we're going to sue you because you're spot zoning here. So that concerns me about precedents about allowing these in certain locations. So that said, I don't know why you guys aren't in Richmond fighting over that Far East. So I would hope that you would go there and explain to Richmond that doesn't matter. You don't have to be residents. It's affecting you. There's actually laws, California laws, that affect that billboard, and they may be in violation of those laws. So, but that said, I think that it continue to move this forward and say, but I will say I like the idea of keeping the definition of electronic illuminated billboards in our zoning code. So there's a clear definition of what that is, so we don't come back with somebody in a year saying, my billboard's not like that, therefore I want it. So,
problem with that. Problem with that. Nick?
To be clear, you're suggesting that we remove all the language that was added except for the definition?
Right.
That's the statute.
That sounds reasonable. Actually, it sounds like a way to protect ourselves if staff agrees. So, yeah. So I have a number of things to say, and I don't want to keep anyone in suspense. I'm going to vote in favor of removing the language for the digital billboard. But I appreciate the comments of the commissioners and the comments of the public. And I just want to say that this issue, as we're trying to say here tonight, is not black and white. There's a ton of things to consider, and I've considered a lot of them. I've been down to the site. I've walked on the Bay Trail and looked across to where the original proposed project would be. I've been on the Bay Trail many times, and I enjoy the Bay Trail. I'm an environmentalist. I very much appreciate the mudflats and all of our shoreline. And still, to me, this is not quite black and white. I'd noted that there is a freeway sign currently on 580, which shines directly onto the, currently shines onto the mudflats and to the Bay Trail, which I found to be interesting. So I might have helped lead us down this path, but as I said, I'm going to vote to rescind our work before. Let me give even a little bit more history, though. When this first came to us, we saw the project for the city building, the maintenance building, and if I recall correctly, we saw a proposal that there be a digital sign there, but no specification for what that would look like. I think we only saw the location of the pole that would support it when it came to us. And I have heard secondhand that there were some proposals that the digital billboard would actually be on the side of the maintenance building, which would have completely shielded it from any residents of Albany. And so that's an interesting fact. I'm not positive that that's actually true, but that's something to consider, that could be done. Probably the advertisers wouldn't like it as much because it wouldn't be as visible. So we never saw the design proposed. When I saw the design going to the city council first before it came to us, usually these things come to us first, I saw that the design proposed at the city maintenance site was absolutely inappropriate. It was tall. I looked at the diagrams that Mr. Kirkham, perhaps, if I got his name right, had put on the web that showed that the actual sign would be visible from residences as it was proposed. So I get all that, and I think that was a bad project. And I think it also was something that we've done before, that Albany has done before, a mistake that we've done before, that I want to help Albany not do again, which is to not involve the community from the start with potentially problematic projects like this. I think the community, the interest groups need to be brought to the table, and their input needs to be gotten from the get-go, because the perception was that this project was snuck in, and I can absolutely see how people would get that perception. That said, you heard tonight there's a number of reasons why putting a billboard on that site might be a good idea. We would lose the billboards on Solano, and we would have the billboards in the CMX zone. If there was no impact on the neighbors, and if there was no impact on the waterfront, then I think everyone would say that was a win. We would get revenue, we would remove billboards from one site. If no one was affected, if the natural environment wasn't affected, then we'd be good. But of course, it's not that simple. I also want to say that I hate billboards. I've lived in Maine, where they don't have billboards, and what a breath of fresh air to drive down a street and it looks like wilderness because there's no signs, there's no billboards. And I get that. And I think digital billboards actually can be better in some ways than regular billboards, but they certainly have to be regulated. Obviously, the first ones that came up, like the ones that were cited, the one at Pacific East Mall, I remember one on 880 that used to actually almost blind me as I drove down 880 at night. The original ones were just absolutely an abomination, and they were placed up, again, the height is an important consideration. They can be regulated. I noted again that in our language, we specified, and I think this is probably came from the industry, we specified that there would be no animation, which is good and makes them safer, but they would change no more than 8 seconds, every 8 seconds. Well, I thought, my God, that's still a lot of changing. You can still be driving down and see it change in one number of times, but we could regulate that. We could say it could only change once a day. we could make that a condition of approval. I think with the one in Berkeley is a good example because I don't see it. I don't notice it when I drive down the freeway, and I think that's probably bad for the advertisers, but I think that's, if any billboard has been done the best it can be, that one in Berkeley has been. And again, these they get a bad rap because of the ones in Oakland, specifically small ones. I think the advertising revenue is an important consideration. I want to note that the internet is funded by advertising. Almost every website you go to is funded by advertising, and you might say that, oh well, we would pay to go to websites if they weren't advertising. That model doesn't work. It's found out that that model doesn't work. The model that works is free advertising on webs is what supports websites. That said, not that it's great, but that is a way to get revenue. And I actually, on my web browsers, I have ad blocking software that blocks the ads for me. So, you know, again, it's not black and white. I think I am concerned with the loss of revenue to Albany. I think that advertising revenue is one way to gain revenue, but there are other ways to gain revenue. I have asked a number of people informally. Like I said, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I couldn't find one person who said they liked digital billboards. No. I think that I want to echo the comments that we did try to do a good job of making this a green. If it was going to happen, to make it green. It hasn't been stated yet, but we specified that there be solar panels on the project so that all power is designed on site, and in that way it's carbon neutral. And unlike current billboards, which have however many acres of plastic, which gets torn down and sent to the landfill, and then more plastic gets put up. So yet another consideration. I opposed that proposed billboard project, as I told you. And I know I wish that we could have something that didn't have any impact, but I very much appreciate the community input. The community obviously has spoken. That's very important. The environmental organizations have spoken, and that's very important too. They consider any billboard a blight on the waterfront that we're trying to protect and trying to restore after potential destruction of things like having a dump at the waterfront. And so I appreciate that. I hear that concern that billboards are a blight to the environment of the shoreline. So I think this is a way to take a stand. It is a way to say, and by the way, environmental organizations are getting together with people fighting billboards more now, and they are working together on this. It is a way to take a stand. It is one way to say, this stops here, and it is a potential way to go down the path of banning all billboards. I think that wouldn't happen in my lifetime, but if that's the way we want to go, it's one way to go. So those are all the pros and cons I weighed, but the community has spoken. And, I think we need to pay a lot of attention to that. And this was just rushed through too quickly without enough consideration. I would like to talk more with the community about this, but I'm going to vote and with the staff's recommendation to take out the language.
Okay, I think everyone has spoken. So I think I'll accept the motion. Any?
Phil, did you want to make the motion because you wanted to? No, you don't. Because you wanted to specify that some language be left in.
Well, no, I think it's already the staff report recommends that language be left in.
The staff.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, that's part. He would just have to move the staff report.
Yeah.
There was one sentence in there.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought that was a change. Okay, well, I'll move that we, let me get the resolution here right. that we adopt Resolution 2014-03, forwarding a recommendation to the City Council to adopt code amendments restricting digital billboards in the CMX zone.
Okay. Is it second? Someone second?
I'll second that.
David has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll vote no. No. Okay, so that takes care of that. We'll move on with the agenda. Those of you who are talking about trails on Albany Hill, we're now looking at that element of the general plan coming up that would address our recreational resources. If you're interested, stick around. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Parks and Open Space Recreation element. Let's take a moment here to switch seats. Barry will come forward
And
and
just,
make a presentation.
I don't remember the guy's name, which doesn't matter anymore. Because I was going to tell him California state law, green code restricts.
Probably get the
Don't have that much energy. So you're running for Peggy's seat? I don't know who the third is. Who the third is?
All set?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Barry is ready, so go ahead.
Okay, good evening, commissioners and members of the public. This is one in a series of study sessions on the Albany General Plan update, and the timing is good given the conversation that you just had. So some of the policies in the park and open space element address some of the issues that you were just addressing. I do want to add that this topic was taken before the Parks and Recreation Commission 2 weeks ago, and we've included in your agenda packet a summary of their comments on this. They spent over an hour going through this document, so hopefully they did some of the heavy lifting for you and can expedite your review of the document. Again, as a reminder, this is where we are in the general plan update. It's not so linear that we're moving topic by topic, but at least from the Planning Commission study session standpoint, we are kind of moving in this direction. We're a little more than halfway through our elements. We've drafted the land use policies, the transportation policies, the housing policies, recreation and open space. Conservation and sustainability will be coming to you soon. That's going to the Sustainability Committee in July, and we're then going to bring you the remaining 3 topic areas by the end of the summer. So recreation and open space and conservation were actually part of the same chapter in the existing general plan. The 1992 plan lumped all of those elements together. We've broken them apart into 2 chapters of the plan because we think that they're both very important issues. They're important to the quality of life, they're important to Albany residents, and each of them is substantial in terms of the policies that are included. So that will be the way this is presented. And with that, I will add that we, as we did with the other elements, began with an audit of all of the existing policies in the City of Albany and in the region that affect the City of Albany. So we looked at the 1992 General Plan policies on this topic area. We looked at particularly the 2004 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. And in this instance, of all the elements of the plan, this one and probably transportation, there was an existing, relatively recent planning document that had a lot of policy direction on the topic. So we didn't reinvent the wheel in this element. A lot of the language that you're seeing is drawn from the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. The level of detail is a little bit different. This is a general plan. It's not about detailed operational issues. It's not about specific improvements to individual parks. So it's really more conceptual, more what the policies should be moving forward over the next 20 years. This is not an update of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. That's a point that we had to make with the Parks Commission. I think there's a perception that there's some things in that plan that need to be updated, but this is not that process, so we're setting the framework for that. We also looked at the Albany Hill Creekside Master Plan, the UC Village Master Plan, which includes quite a lot of policies on park and open space uses within UC Village. And some of those are transferable to the rest of the city. And then the waterfront park area. Most of the waterfront park policies are in a separate element on the waterfront, but there are a large number of documents, as the commission knows, that address future open space plans for the waterfront, the Bay Trail Plan, the East Shore State Park Plan, and so forth. Those were consulted as part of this process.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So are you saying then that you said that this is not an update, should not be considered an update of the 2004 Parks, Recreation, Open Space Master Plan. So do you see those two things having separate tracks that, we're doing the general plan update, but we could also do an update to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan at a later date as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's very likely.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is not meant to be legible from the audience perspective, but it's just an illustration of what the policy audit looks like. Essentially, we've repeated all of the policies in the existing planning documents, done a little analysis of it, identified whether it's still valid, whether it should be carried forward. What this allowed us to do is, when we created the policy document, is to include a reference in small italics back to the source document. So if you read a policy and you think, well, I don't like that policy, in most cases it came from somewhere else and it's already adopted. There are a few we've specifically identified as new policies, but I would say probably 70%, 80% of the policies are already on the books. So I'm going to walk through 6 open space, park and open space goals and highlight some of the policy topics, and then I'll turn it back to the commission for discussion. Again, what we'd like to do is have you walk through the content of this, as we've done with the previous elements, and get some feedback on the content. So the first goal really deals with open space, and this is, I will point out that this is the one goal that's mandated by the state. We need to address open space for the preservation of natural resources, for recreation, for the protection of public health and safety, and for the production of resources. That's a state requirement. And that is essentially what this goal says. We've added things like food production and aesthetics into the goal, because those are both issues that have come up. The policies under this goal primarily address public property, but there are a couple that really touch on the importance of private open space in the city. First, that Albany be a green community, and there's some discussion in the text about what that means. Preserving Albany Hill as open space, the remaining areas. Looking at the waterfront as an important open space resource, the creeks. Looking at our urban open spaces, so things like plazas and streetscapes and other public spaces, what we call the public realm. Community gardening and urban agriculture, this is an issue of growing importance. It's not really addressed in the current general plan. It is a form of open space. And then residential yards, just looking at the character of residential yards and their importance to creating kind of an open feel in the city. The second goal deals with parkland expansion and improvement, and the goal is to expand and improve Albany's park system to keep pace with population growth and meet the demand for recreational facilities in the city. What this is really a framework for park planning, and so this is where we establish the fact that there is a hierarchy of parks in the city. There are community parks and neighborhood parks and mini parks. What are those? Who do they serve? And how can the city plan for those? This is also where we establish a service standard of how many acres per 1,000 residents the city should aspire to in planning for its parks, and that provides some leverage for park impact fees and so forth moving forward. Again, there are policies about planning for new parks, including Pierce Street, but also other parks that could be built in the future, developed. Looking at how we manage the demand for park facilities, for buildings, for sports fields, for rec centers and so forth, with the need for passive open space. How do those considerations get balanced? Looking at preserving resources in our parks, recognizing that there are some environmentally sensitive areas. How do we manage those? Compatibility with surrounding uses would include things like night lighting of fields, noise levels in parks, scheduling of activities, parking, and so forth, and how those align with the neighborhoods. And then finally, the importance of private and nonprofit recreational facilities like the YMCA and so forth that complement the city's park and open space areas. UC Village would be included there too. The third goal is to maintain and enhance Albany's parks so that they provide attractive open space and high-quality recreational facilities that serve youth facilities and youth families and seniors. So this goal is different from the last one in that the last one is really about how do we expand open space and improve open space. This is really more about how do we maintain what we already have. And so much of the policy emphasis here is more operational, modernization of facilities, balancing the needs of multiple user groups within parks, park security and safety, scheduling of activities, funding of improvements, how do we use volunteers versus city staff, ensuring sufficient funding for maintenance, managing vegetation, and those kinds of issues are covered by the policies in this section. The fourth goal is to provide high-quality services and recreational programs that meet the diverse sports, fitness, and leisure time needs of Albany residents. The goal primarily deals with recreational programs. This isn't in every general plan. I'll say some general plans don't even deal with this topic area, but again, it's in the Parks and Recreation master plan. It's an important issue to the community. It is addressed in some general plans, and we felt like it was important to carry through into this plan. So this really looks at how the city's recreational services can respond to changes in the community, to the growing needs of seniors, to the changing needs of youth and children, how we create a sense of community and the spirit of community through our parks, promoting public health and physical fitness through the parks and through the recreational programs, and then incorporating cultural arts and leisure into park programming. The fifth goal relates to joint use and collaboration. And again, this is a particularly important goal in Albany because the park acreage is very small in Albany relative to the population of the city. But there are these other agencies, other entities that manage open space in the city. And this really looks at how to leverage those resources to maximize the benefits for residents. So the goal is to promote joint planning, acquisition, development, maintenance, and use of park sites, school sites, UC Village open space, and other recreational and community facilities. Again, the policies focus on joint use agreements with the school district, how to access and continue to use the UC Village open space areas, the Veterans Building, which is actually a county facility, the East Bay Regional Park District, opportunities on the waterfront, coordination with adjacent cities, there's some language on Tom Bates Field, and then coordinating programming between these different agencies. The sixth goal addresses trails, and it is to develop an integrated, comprehensive system of trails linking neighborhoods and schools to recreational facilities and open spaces, including the waterfront. And again, there's a set of policies that's mostly taken from the Parks and Rec master plan. A few of these are actually from the active transportation plan. There are a lot of cross-references back and forth. Transportation plan element looks really at the transportation and mobility function of the trail system. This looks really more at the recreational function of the trail system and how the city can be better connected to its parks, to its waterfront, and so forth. There is a policy in here about providing for a trail easement through that 11-acre parcel that was being discussed earlier, so that's been included in this. Also looking at the Albany Greenway, the mid-block path system that is present in a limited way in the city, and also looking at opportunities along the creeks. So most of the content, again, of these 6 goals is already adopted city policy. We've tweaked it, we've reorganized it a little bit to be more of the level that's appropriate for a general plan. Another issue, and this really goes to part of the second goal, relates to the service standards for parks, and we had a long discussion with the Parks and Rec Commission about what should the service standard be in Albany. Right now, the city has adopted a series of service standards for all these different park types. My point is that this doesn't really work in practice because if you say we want to have 0.05 acres of mini park per 1,000 residents and somebody builds a development, does that mean they have to provide a micro mini park and a micro neighborhood park and a micro, I mean, what works more effectively and what most cities do is to adopt a lump sum acreage per 1,000 standard for all active parkland and then use that allocation of park to figure out on a case-by-case basis how that can best be used to improve the city's park system without getting into the detail about whether it should be a mini park or a neighborhood park and so forth. So the recommendation here is to move toward that kind of a standard in the new plan. We can still say that, we may be short on one type of park and we may need another type of park and so forth, but the idea is to go towards something like 3 acres of active open space per 1,000 residents and begin to work toward that in a broader way.
And those figures were the existing figures for Albany, is that correct?
Yeah, what the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan does is essentially says these are the existing ratios in the city, and in the future, we want to keep them. We want to maintain or exceed them. So it doesn't say that, it doesn't necessarily say that each new development has to provide a slice of each of those parks, but it's not clear in how those ratios would be increased if the city grows by 2,000 or 3,000 people. Does that mean each of those little park types has to go up by a certain fraction?
A follow-up question, if I may. Are there recognized guidelines or a regional average from city to city that we could compare these to? There's the National Recreation and Park Association standards, and then there's something called the Quimby Act, which is what enables cities to do park impact fees. So all of this is basically working within those parameters. It would be interesting to see where we're ahead and where we're behind and really try to focus on those. We're probably behind on all of them, is what you're saying.
What's confusing is what is in each of these categories. And there was some discussion about, well, what's counted in that regional park number, that 9.52 acres of, it's the waterfront, but what at the waterfront? Where was the line drawn? Is most of that water or is it land? I mean, there's some questions about how those numbers were derived. And I know that there's an answer to those questions we're still working on. But in any case, we're looking for a simpler approach.
Sure. I think it'd be nice to be able to have some comparison, and then, of course, the overall figure is probably the most telling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, most cities are using 4 or 5 acres per 1,000, unless they're already way above that, in which case they will set their standard higher. But that's active parkland and not regional open space or passive open space.
Got it.
So I mentioned that we met with Parks and Rec. This was on June 12th. We spent a little more than an hour. They did concur that there was a need to consolidate and clarify the per capita service standards. There was quite a lot of discussion about what the definition of open space was, and some concern that when we have a goal to maximize open space, does that mean people will use that to prevent any building from ever being built in the city? Because when you build one building on space that doesn't have a building now, are you taking away open space? So there was some discussion about what maximizing open space really meant, and possible need for wordsmithing that goal to maybe back off of how aggressive it sounded. There were some concerns about the impacts of the open space policies on private property and what the intent was in having policies that say things like maintain front yards in residence, because that's part of what enhances the character of our city and creates kind of an open sense of the streets and so forth. Some requests for clarification and actually omissions, or deletions, I should say, not omissions, deletions on turf, artificial turf and night lighting. There were some policies in the existing Park and Rec master plan about artificial turf and encouraging night lighting. Some question about whether we want those in the general plan. There was, again, this is a highlight of what some of the discussion was without getting into the exact wording. Edits to the joint use policies, some concerns about the level of commitment to working, or to the Tom Bates Field joint use agreement that was discussed. And then minor changes were suggested to some of the policies on the topics you see listed here. Some interest in adding new policies on rooftop open space, on enhancing the open space along Interstate 80, particularly near the Buchanan crossing, and then recognizing the link between stormwater management and water quality and open space. Those were some of the suggestions given to us about possible new policies. So we provided a more detailed summary of those notes in the agenda packet. So finally, a couple of discussion questions. Are there missing topics requiring policies? Do these policies provide the right direction? Are there additional actions needed to implement the policies? And then we've already touched on the service standard issue. So that's the presentation, and I will turn it back to the chair for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess I think I'll first start. Any questions of Barry at this moment? Here? I will just comment, I think, Barry, that I noted that the part of the staff report on the discussion from the Parks and Rec Commission, that's where most of my comments as I read through this kind of occurred. And so I'm sure we'll get to that. I think I'll bring it up later. Okay, so no other questions of Barry? All right. Then, let's see. So to proceed, we had your last slide there might be a good place to start, or would the commission rather kind of go one at a time and present? Do you have any markups on your drafts or anything you want to discuss? What part? Hearing, forgot it. Of course. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address the commission on Barry's presentation or on this issue before us? I'll open the public hearing. Please come forward. Yep.
The Albany Hill South Strand, Pierce Street, the Albany Hill Master Plan, when they were looking at view corridors, they only wanted to cut down trees at that time that infringed on the oak forest. They didn't want to start approving other tree cutting because they thought it wasn't appropriate. But there was discussion about expanding the Overlook Park, and I think that shows up in a lot of places. And the thing that I note when I walk on the hill is that if you're walking uphill, it's too steeply, it's too slippery. And a lot of people, the eucalyptus leaves and the fact that there's poison oak and you don't like to put your hand down if you start to stumble or something. So you basically want to go lateral a lot. And as part of the history, long before there was a sidewalk on that 11-acre parcel, because the city couldn't come up with their 50% match for the Safe Route to Schools program, they started using a trail that went from Gateview to Gateview Avenue. And all the school kids went to school by walking along that trail and then going Gateview Avenue down to Washington and then on to Cerritos Street. They avoided walking in the street. And eventually there was one year in which the staff said, we can get 100% funding from the Safe Route to School, and that's why the sidewalk was put in, because there wasn't enough projects that year. And so we had to wait for a sidewalk to connect our part of the community to the rest of Albany until you could get 100% funding by a grant. That's how disenfranchised the people there historically have felt from the city, because the very first regressive parcel tax was that Albany Hill Master Plan, the $5 million bond, and that set a pattern in which multifamily housing is paying a disproportionate amount of the cost for making it more difficult for affordable market rate housing. And that's a problem throughout the whole Bay Area. That's because you have this huge gap between public housing and market rate housing. And when you have these flat taxes, like we pay $250,000 just on the 500 block of Pierce Street to the sewer tax, and yet we have our sewer laterals inside the building. So this is simply a subsidy from our block and other multifamily housing to single-family neighborhoods. And so just to follow up on that, $150,000 may seem like a lot, but $250,000 seems like a lot too. And again, there's zero. But so what I hope you put in the plan is make sure the trails are lateral, going on to Gateview Avenue, and not just straight up and down. And that won't be able to be done in the short run because until they have a project there, but think about it. Thank
Okay,
you.
good, thank you.
Hi, Chris Kirkham again, 545 Pierce Street, resident and owner. Tell me if this is inappropriate to comment on, but I was looking at the general plan update, June 25th, 2014, and on the page 1, it talked about policy 1.2 with Albany Hill and designating the crest of Albany Hill for open space. Policy 1.2.
Yep.
And my immediate reaction to that was, can we expand this language? I spent a lot of time hiking on that hill, and it's got all the eucalyptus on one side and the natural oak vegetation on the other. I've seen a wolf on that hill, deer, turkey. It's just a really great escape. And I think the community around the hill would be very interested in helping you protect that hill in any way we can, and keeping the open spaces maximized as possible. So I had an interest on, who owns that land and what projects are going on that will decide the fate of that land, and can we get involved?
Okay. Those are all things that you can determine. They are, part of it at the very top is a city park. It is city-owned, and not all of it. There's some private land left on the hill, but it's worthwhile you're doing. And there is a separate Albany Hill Creek plan that is more detailed than the general plan. So, hierarchy of things. What we're working on right now is the entire city's general plan. One of many elements of it. Part of the input into this discussion tonight is that Albany Hill Creek Protection Plan is the name of it, I think it is. It'd be worthwhile you're going on the city website and getting a copy of that and taking a look at it, and you'll learn a lot about the hill and about the city's plans for the hill.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
It's not only that, but in the history of Albany, there has been a percentage of the money that came in for open space and parks that went to Albany, purchase Albany property to expand the open space.
Yep.
I don't know what the percentage is right now, but you may want to work with the city council and staff and get a background on that tax and what it's used for open space, park maintenance, that type of thing, and see where it goes. But there's a whole process right now in the city of Albany for that.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Speaker, oh my gosh. Custer State Park.
South Dakota, Black Hills.
Close. I'm born in Deadwood.
Really? It's wonderful.
That's good.
Great
Close
place.
to my heart. Thank you.
And I was born in Rapid City.
He was born in Rapid City.
Oh, okay. Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
D. Jacobson, 555 Pierce. I have a question. I spend a lot of time hiking on the hill with my dogs and from time to time, and there are coyotes and deer and all kinds of wildlife out there. But I have a question because it came up at my condo. The land immediately south of 555 Pierce is about, I think it's an 11-acre parcel.
Right.
That my understanding is that it's privately owned.
Correct.
Which surprised me. And there was some also questions. We did some limited tree removal around the edges of our property. There were trees that were impacting. And so I learned, as I said, that some of the land around there is private. And I just want to curious how I would imagine that private land pays the city taxes. I mean, there's revenue from it. And how that impacts how you handle and are able to do things with the land. And perhaps it might be a good idea to buy that land or do something to acquire it. We treat it, it's signed like it was park, like we owned it, but it's not.
I hate to say it, but the revenue from a billboard would probably buy it.
Well, but I'm just saying, it's private land, and I'm sure there's tax revenue from it, but you can't build on it.
No,
Well,
we don't know it is for sale, and you're right, it is private land there, it's potentially developable, it's in the general plan, it's a certain zoning district, a number of units could go there, and yes, the owners know the city, and they work with the fire department on weed abatement, I know that. Don't fence it off. They do allow access across it. They've been pretty cooperative with the city in the past, my understanding. But yes, it is private property and could be developed someday, probably
Well,
will.
and realistically, it should be noted that like the parcels at 555, 545, and 535, the lower sloped portions closest to Pierce Street is where the development has taken place or would take place, and as we get onto the steeper slopes, it's unrealistic, and so much of the open space is owned by you all as part of the homeowners associations that, you know, encompass the entire parcel.
Okay.
And also, we don't get taxes off the property. The county does.
Oh, we get a portion.
We get a small portion of it.
Small portion, yeah.
Very small portion.
All right.
Not enough.
All right, any other speakers? No speaker cards? All right. Thank you. I'll close the public hearing and then bring it back now to the commission, figure out how we want to move forward here in going through the policies, talking with Barry about what done here. I have to say, I guess I could start. Personally, I read it and I had very few marks on it. I mean, I think you've done a very nice job of pulling those together and consolidating it. The policies we have, I think that it's appropriate for the general plan level, what we were doing. Most of my interest was at the, reading the discussion at Parks and Recreation Commission. I thought there were some interesting points raised by them. I thought that some of those points were really more detailed, more specific, a more detailed level than we should address in the general plan. I think you filtered that through appropriately. I wonder if I have anything. Yeah, there was some talk about encouraging rooftop open space at the planning, at their commission. That's come up to us before, and I'm not excited to say that. I don't think that in your draft, put a policy in that would apply city policy. We encourage that, in favor of doing that. Deal with it on a case-by-case thing, but I do think it would be a danger.
Which number?
One comment they have.
Yeah, which number is that?
I don't know, are there others that other people have? I think we need better coordination between the city and the school district on recreational things. I think you've covered it pretty well in your language. I think you have some of that language in the existing general plan. I know there's always tension, there seems to be always tension between the school board and the city council, these things. But I agree that it's an issue. Just helped work on the Albany Community Foundation sponsorship of the spring concert in the park for the high school musicians. Well, we had a problem there. We almost had to rent the stage from the city because it is not necessarily available to the school district, not automatic. It was an issue that had to be dealt with, and I don't think it should. I think that there should be a reciprocity between them that would work out. That's an issue with the pool. I think it's probably an issue with some of their lands over around the high school and park. I'd like to see more. I don't know that it's a general plan issue. I'm not sure that it's appropriate in the general. Glad to see that we have policies, that you're proposing policies in there that encourage that cooperation. Anyone else want to, any specific suggestions or comments on any of
Actually, I would like to
Barry's
further
language?
Yeah, I'd like to further one discussion, or a couple of discussion items, and one of them is policy number 1.9. And it's an interesting one because I'm curious on how that conflicts with our housing, where we are trying to encourage residential units and rear yards, secondary residential units. And here we're saying to maintain requirements for structural setbacks to minimum yard areas.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of conflict where we're trying to keep that green space behind the houses and then encouraging building in that same space.
One of the Parks and Rec commissioners suggested we might say front yards as opposed to just yards, because it's really the front yard that is what people see. I mean, that's the key.
It's interesting, our design guidelines, right up front, say, front yard is the presentation.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we hadn't really addressed lot coverage in our encouraging of second units, but I think, you know, it may be as or more important if you're adding a second unit that there is some yard space that's maintained. So, you know, if a house is already built out to the maximum lot coverage, maybe they have to find square footage within their existing building or modify that existing structure to find a second unit as opposed to covering even more of the backyard.
We rarely have issues, home additions.
No, we rarely do.
Rarely do.
Right, I think our...
Usually, even when we're done, it exceeds the...
Yeah.
Except maybe on some, it gets real close on some of those 20.
When we're trying to encourage secondary units
We are,
in the
we
rear
are.
yard,
We
what
are.
I'd
And
like
maybe
to...
ours...
Hang on, what I'd like to say is this, if I can, that we may want to think about lowering the lot coverage if you have a secondary residential unit to encourage some open space, some garden space, some green space. I know that's counter the way we discussed before, but if you've got two families living on a parcel, or one family was previously living on a parcel, you want to try to at least have adequate open space for two families.
Mm-hmm.
So we may want to think about that aspect of how much open space should we have for two families on a parcel? Right, but I'm saying, as part of the general plan, though, we're trying to encourage this.
Yeah, in my experience, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall lot coverage ever being a hindrance to accessory buildings or accessory dwellings. So I suspect that including one of the applications today had a fairly sizable shop in the rear yard, which could just as easily be a accessory, and they still met the coverage.
Yeah, I don't think I did the calculations on that one on rear yard coverage.
43.2.
No, rear yard.
Oh, rear yard.
How much of the building was in the rear yard?
Well, that was...
Or am I thinking Berkeley has that rear yard calculation? We have a rear yard calculation.
20 yards, 20 foot
Yeah, it's in
setback,
there.
minimum setback.
Yeah, but it's a lot, there's a
But for
coverage.
rear yard lot coverage, it's 30%.
Okay. So that may be adequate to take care of the open space issue for the second one, but again, usable open space.
Right, well, that's why I think our correction, or the change of the ordinance that allows you to build an accessory dwelling unit to the setbacks, just like an accessory building, generates more usable space. Yeah.
Wait, I'll get two more.
Go ahead, yeah.
The Albany Parkway, I think it was mentioned in one spot, but we really didn't I think we need to look at doing more with that space. And I'm not even sure it's under our control, but, you know.
Good, I don't know.
There's part of it that is, and then part of it is BART right of way, and
Right.
we have to negotiate with BART.
Right, so,
Planning commissioners mentioned something about a new, like, a sports field down at the end of Albany, next to the creek down there, where the right of way is very wide. It's kind of a de facto play area now.
yes, so looking at that parcel also. And then you mentioned in, I think it's 5C, about Cougar Field. How does it affect the fact that Cougar Field's not in the city or county? Well, it isn't a county, but it's the wrong county. It's a different county.
Different county.
It's not a wrong
It's
county.
taken directly out of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Not
Yeah.
that that's a good answer to your question, but it's an established city policy, so it's basically been incorporated.
Yeah, because I think there's been, when I was part of that development, that there was some major issues with the city of Albany and using that facility on weekends. And I don't know, I don't remember the outcome of what it is now. This was many years ago. But I think that we need to look at what our agreement is for using that facility weekends and evenings, and whether it would be available for the general public.
Well, I can speak to a little bit of that, because when we were negotiating the rearrangement of ball fields, I know that relations with the neighbors on Barron's and the other street behind there, they were really excited to see more girls softball and less boys baseball taking place there, less pinging of aluminum bats and raining down of foul balls. So at least in that case, you know, the current situation is better than it was when the park opened. I think there are still, you know, real limitations on night lighting, and those will always be in place,
right?
Most likely. But that is also an example, specific to your comment, Doug, of the city and UC Berkeley and the school district working together very well to solve issues. And I think they do have, I forget what they call it, but you know, a triad of people that gather frequently to keep those relationships strong and healthy. And I think it's great that it's mentioned in the general plan as well.
Yeah, and that was actually my last point was, I know we haven't talked about the facilities at the Albany Village as far as the open spaces available and stuff, and whether we should actually discuss having a joint powers where those facilities get used. At this point, and again, I'm going back a couple of years here, where Albany residents were not really allowed to use the facilities in the village, and with the exception of the Albany Little League fields. And so I'm wondering, do we need to relook at that, given that one of our larger parks is adjacent to UC Village? And that's it for my comments.
Where Phil was mentioning Cougar Field, I think that's on page
12. Right.
I thought, I missed, I think there might be something missing here as well. I thought maybe you might want to add an action item, 5E, that would talk about coordination or with the Park District over the Coughlin East Shore. You have items about Tom Bates, that's about these existing things, but we also have the state park plan out there, our bulb and all of that.
Right, so there'll be an entire element of the general plan just on that topic.
On the waterfront,
Right.
waterfronts.
Right.
I get.
But what we could do if we don't actually include an action here would be to cross-reference the fact that there's that's addressed in another part of the plan.
That would do it for me. Yeah.
Right.
It looked like, that's a big deal. That's like the elephant.
Agreed, right.
Way. It's a big deal.
Right, and
it wasn't mentioned here.
There is action 1E, under the first goal. East Shore State Park actively participate in the planning and development of McLaughlin East Shore State Park, including the
Action
ultimate
one.
incorporation
There we go.
of Albany bulb into the park area.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that it is there.
We're jumping around a little bit, so I'm going to jump back to maybe close the discussion on residential guidelines, but I have in my notes here, rooftop open space should be encouraged. So I know we disagree on that.
Yeah,
but, as we approach specifically higher density developments, multifamily, and mixed use, it's a way of achieving open space.
Well, I think it's important we start devising some guidelines for these rooftop open spaces. Mm-hmm. Percentages of roof open, access.
I remain worried about it. I'm not necessarily, not completely opposed to it. I know that on multifamily developments, it can be a terrific benefit.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can reach.
I saw someone on the roof of the Trachtenberg building, the new apartment building over there. They're barbecuing. Well, that's cool. So there's a roof garden up there or something up there. I thought, well, that's good. That's good. That's good. That what has bothered me with the ones coming in, the arms race and home additions that we could see on Way and with slopes are shallow, and everyone is angling for a little view through the trees of a piece of the city, a piece of the bridge, and they go up on their roof and say, oh, best view of my house is right through here, and then they want to come and put a porch in. Then the neighbor behind them has to put a porch in, a rooftop deck in, to see over them. And I know from my work in Berkeley that these are really difficult, really complicated, and Berkeley staff has told me it always happens on the low slopes of the hills, and that's what Albany is. We're there. I know, I think it's a big problem. I'm worried about it, and I probably voted against the one we had a few months ago.
I will see if I can arrange a field trip to a project of ours that has one. And I think it'd be good to get a sense of how it impacts the neighbors, because that's really our concern, and it's an appropriate concern.
And
Yeah.
design review, how it gets integrated, and how it might impact the,
Because I agree, there's a way to do them well, and there's a way where they could become a problem.
then I'm not necessarily.
And that's why I think we ought to develop some guidelines for the rooftop uses.
Favorite.
Or I'll guarantee you, we're going to see 100% rooftops, outdoor spaces soon.
On multifamily.
On single family.
On single family.
Because it's very valuable real estate up there.
Yeah. We designed a project in, not Belmont. Belmont, we did one with a roof garden, but Brisbane. And it was 100% rooftop deck space. But this is a slight aside conversation, because this is more appropriately in zoning than open space.
I lost to where we are. Have you finished your comments, David?
Yeah, I was just going to say one last thing, which is I think the Parks and Recreation Commission, this is really under their purview. They provided excellent comments and feedback, and I don't have any more to add to it.
I just had questions. Actually, I thought it was well done as well, and I actually had I think I had a lot of input to this because I participated in the master plan. The public input to the master plan, Parks and Recreation master plan in 2004.
Were you chair of the Parks and Rec when they did that?
And I was chair for Parks and Rec for 3 years, and on the commission for 6 years, I think. So in that way, I had a lot of input into a lot of these documents. But I was curious. Mr. Strand has left, and I wanted to respond to him about the having to go for a grant to get the sidewalk, and say that that's actually not an unusual thing, that we need grants for transportation projects, and maybe another example of Albany needing revenue to fund things like that. So question about the input of the Parks and Recreation Commissioners about the private property, the idea of private property. Can you say more about those discussions and, your opinion of them?
It was one commissioner's read that the policy that you all were just debating a few minutes ago on residential yards was somehow not appropriate within the purview of an open space element, because his view of an open space element is that it should focus on public land, on city parks and things like that, and not start getting into private developable properties. And it kind of was part of that bigger discussion about what is open space, and when we have a policy to maximize open space, don't get too overzealous with that and say, well, we can't develop any piece of vacant land in the city or any vacant lot because it's open space. So it was really linked to that thread of conversation.
Okay.
They probably spent 10 minutes on that topic.
Okay. All right. And I noticed that I was going to comment about the artificial turf and night lighting, but I noticed your comment that you said you were just going to remove that language. So, and yeah, no, that's actually it for my comments.
Actually, night lighting just reminded me, there's state law on night lighting, so we may not want to try to be in conflict with state law as far as the amount of light that can go over your property line, and the intensity of the light at certain feet off the property line. So the state's already looked at this pretty carefully in the night sky.
Some cities, San Jose is adopting the Dark Skies Initiative. There, I suppose the general plan question would be, do we do that, or should we do that as a matter
One of the Parks Commissioners suggested that, actually.
Yeah.
But that would probably come in the conservation element.
Yeah, I would second that, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe. If we do, we'll have a billboard on Solano that violates it. Okay, I think we should go over various questions just to check. Are there any missing topics requiring policies that have occurred to anyone?
No.
Policies provide the right direction.
We'll see.
Additional action programs needed to implement. So I was suggesting at the East Shore Park Plan in one place, but in the other, David pointed out it's actually a policy. Can the city clarify its service standards? I know you said that was a big discussion at the Parks and Rec Commission. My thoughts on that are that it would be fine for the general plan to have a broader standard, and fine for the Parks and Recreation Plan to break that down into more specific standards. So.
And is this beyond the ratios that you were outlining, or is this specifically targeting?
It's focused on just having a one, per X number of acres per 1,000 residents of parkland in the city.
Now, is that usable parkland or just
It's
parkland?
usable parkland, right. And we do need to make that distinction because they're different.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it would be good to state what service goals we're targeting. That would be appropriate. And then if there are any major developments that come along on all of our undeveloped land, we'll have something to weigh them against.
I think the word usable is important, both with respect to open space and parkland.
A thought, now you guys can tar and feather me later, but what if a development came in and said, I want to build out this, I can't meet my open space standards on my parcel, but I'm willing to buy other parcels to develop into open space in the city of Albany, or does Albany have other open spaces they want to see developed in certain locations? Do we have a mechanism, or should we encourage that in the general plan, saying you can offset?
I think clarity on that service standard would help us to negotiate such a thing.
And that's the idea behind an impact fee, is that it's not really effective to have each individual project provide a tiny, tiny park. It would be more effective to have each project pay a fee that would be used to buy a more substantial site to create a real park.
A
lot of places, that's common.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we have it actually already in the city of Albany. As I mentioned, I don't know where we're at with it because it's been 10 years since I looked at it, but Albany was getting a tax on a bedroom, and that money was going in for open space acquisition. And a lot of that money went to buy open space on Albany Hill, and it also went for park maintenance. There was a fund there. I'm not sure it's still there.
I would favor Phil's idea of having a system for off-site open space, but only as long as you also met the zoning standards for private open space, like a minimal size balcony or a rooftop deck on the building, or, you know, certainly light and air for the individual apartments would still have to be there, but.
Oh, yeah, that's.
But,
Yeah, I think this is more targeted at, you know, someone's adding a good number of residential units, which adds a, you know, decent chunk to the population of the city, and suddenly our parks and open space ratio drops, you know, to a degree where we kind of say, hey, you know, you need to help us replace, you know, get back to our standard for, or up to our standard for, you know, public open space as a result of the scale of this project. And having some standards is going to help us do that.
Occurs to me that we have like creek daylighting projects, fairly, you know, pretty big deal in El Cerrito, I think parts of Berkeley, Oakland. We don't have that mentioned anywhere in our general plan. Are there any opportunities that we're missing? Is it anyone, Nick, do you remember anything in the Parks and Rec plan about any segments of creek that are candidates to be daylighted or opened up in any way?
Now that you mention it, I don't know, and I hope there are, but I don't know
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I don't see the word daylight in this document.
Oh, that's cool. You just searched it. Okay.
So again, the conservation element will look at creek daylighting. We can make sure that that's covered there. There is
Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Okay.
a couple of policies in here about the creeks, but not specifically about daylighting.
Okay. Yeah.
There aren't that many creeks that aren't already daylight.
Well,
in
there's
town.
a few that are, you know, they're culverted, you know, but, yeah, so what do we have? Village, is there a middle creek, does that run through the town, middle of the town, doesn't it? Yeah.
Marin Creek is one, but
And
that
Marin,
follows,
parts of Marin Creek?
follows Marin Avenue.
Follows Marin Avenue.
Yeah,
Well,
that would be exciting to
that
find.
would be, that'd be very cool, but not gonna happen, yeah.
All right, I agree.
Remove that turn lane.
Great.
And, yeah, daylight that, yeah.
Yeah.
When you say there aren't that many that aren't daylighted, you mean ones that aren't underneath, where, not culverted underneath private property? or-
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more of Cordonices and Cerrito, which are largely open,
Yeah, they are, they're largely open. Cordonices, yeah.
and Village once it crosses San Pablo.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Okay, do you want more from us? Is there other
No, I
questions
think
for us?
that's good direction, and I'll produce a revised version that incorporates some of the feedback from tonight, as well as the Park Commission feedback. I do want to add, and Jeff might want to chime in on this, that we're at the next session, I mentioned that we're going to look at conservation sustainability. We will also reintroduce to you the housing element, because we're
started again.
Since the last study session, we've received certification of the housing element. I think you already know that.
Yeah.
But now we are starting the update, which needs to be adopted by City Council by January 2015. So the process has begun, and we're beginning what will be a red line strikeout version of the existing housing element for resubmittal to the state that shows any changes we need to make to reflect the next cycle of housing needs assignments. The city's regional housing needs number has gone up a little bit, and we need to demonstrate that we have the capacity to meet that need. And then some of the programs may need to be moved forward and be more aggressive.
Do you envision the new version to be a big task for us to take care of, or is it, should it go pretty smoothly since we just finished the last one?
I would hesitate to say.
Okay.
Yes, the answer is yes. What date do we expect those?
The
next steps.
July 23rd. Yes, thanks.
When you say it has to be submitted to the City Council.
And housing?
Yeah, we probably won't get into too much detail on housing. It's really more of an introduction of, and I promise I won't do it the same PowerPoint I did 6 months ago. It's really just kind of giving you an update of what we need to do to get the element back to Sacramento and get it certified.
Okay, and then along with that, conservation and
Right,
sustainability.
right.
That's in it.
Okay.
And you said we have to get it to the city council, or you have to get it to the city council by January 1st, 2015?
Well, yes, but that is after the state review. So we have to actually produce a draft of the new housing element by roughly September. And that has to go to the council, and then that has to be submitted to the state, and they have to provide comments back to the city. The commission has to make a recommendation, and the council has to adopt it all before January 31st.
And, 31st, and then why is that? Why that deadline? Is that a state deadline?
That's a state mandate for all cities in the Bay Area.
Okay, and that's the one that some cities, including us, missed last time.
In 2009.
Yeah.
We missed
okay.
it by 6.5 years or something.
Not-
A little bit.
not
A little bit.
No.
Yeah.
That's nothing in light years.
I mean, we weren't the only ones, right? And
No.
they missed that, but
No.
Almost.
No.
No, I was in another city, they were doing the same thing.
No, I think it's been hard for everybody, I think.
Turlock, might have been Turlock.
All right. Boy, anything else?
Thank you.
That's it.
I mean, that's great, thanks.
Okay.
That went smoothly. Are there any announcements, communications, discussions? Staff, do you have anything? Any commissioners have anything?
I only have one item, it's kind of related to former projects we've heard. I've noticed a lot of story poles lingering, in particular the ones on my commute.
Oh, uh-huh.
So I just wondered if we wanted to, encourage people to take them down after they've been approved.
Oh, that's a good
Because there's
idea.
often a long months and months between approval and building permit and starting construction.
Actually, we can make that a
They want to
condition.
take them down to avoid any
Yeah.
liability issue.
Yeah, or just,
If the poles come down.
further flags, literally. going
Yeah.
up.
no,
Actually, why don't we do this?
I
Why don't
hadn't
we-
thought about that, but we could say that when people get approval and say, hey,
They wait
remember-
the 14 days. After 14 days, poles have to come down if they want their planning approval finalized. Well, you keep them up afterwards in case there's an appeal.
Yeah.
So after 14 days, it's final, get them down.
And you will take down your story
That's a,
poles.
that's a real good, that's a very good observation, yeah.
Right.
So,
Or
you
put
know,
that as part of their conditions of approval.
there probably was, there was something I knew, I was trying to remember what it was that I wanted to mention. At Ann's suggestion, I looked at the El Cerrito specific plan for San Pablo Avenue. It's a daunting document. I haven't printed it. I've looked at it on my computer, hundreds of pages, really. Form-based zoning, very, very different. And I think I will print it out and read it. I don't know much about that. And a very big plan, covers a big area, and calls for a lot of housing units, a lot of development over, next period of time. It's a very interesting document, looks like. Mhm.
We have a college intern working for us this summer who's taking a careful look at that, and perhaps at your next meeting, we can give you a presentation on that. I can't remember what else is on the agenda, whether.
Oh, for July 9th, well, with the continuation, we have 6 residential remodel applications, 2 of which are going to be on the consent calendar. So,
You say, what, 6?
6.
So you have 4.
6 on the consent calendar?
No, 2 on the consent
Oh,
calendar,
oh,
but 6
okay.
altogether.
All right.
It could be 5,
That'll be a-
just depending on.
Okay, that'll be a big meeting.
Survey requesting is prepared by the applicant.
All right.
We'll try to squeeze something on, if not that meeting, the following one, to give you an update on that. As well as the El Cerrito condo project has reemerged and is.
In the plaza?
Does their form-based zoning cover that project?
In this case, no, because it got approved back
Got
in
approved.
2007.
But I think that is in the specific plan area, yeah. The plaza is, I think the plaza was, is, yeah.
Can you send us the link to the El Cerrito form-based?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the city of Windsor and, not Pinole, but the other one, Hercules, they have engaged
Have they?
that type of
Oh, is that
zoning.
right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's the new urbanism
Yeah,
likes to
Yeah.
apply that because you're really creating the form of the city.
mhm, yeah. And Windsor, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Seeing nothing else, then I will adjourn. Our next meeting is July 9th. So, anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.